Welcome to Fathers Unfiltered. This is a podcast that allows separated fathers to tell their story. Now we've got today's guest. Do you want to introduce yourself? Tell us your name, age, what you do for a living.
Ashley. Age is a sore subject because I'm 40 next year. Well, 40 this year now because we're 2025, yeah. So about to turn 40, which I certainly don't feel it, but I'm starting to look it. Work, I'm a project manager for a kitchen company, so I arrange the installations and organise all of that.
So how long have you been separated from your ex?
So I've been with my current partner now for, I think we're looking at around 6 years, and we separated the year before we met. So you're looking at around sort of 7.5 years, I would say.
And how long were you together?
Coming up towards, I believe it was getting towards 13 years.
Okay. So take us back to the day that you met. How did that come about?
So we met it was literally a mutual friend. So there was a birthday party in the town centre, and we both knew the person whose party it was. So I was there with some friends. She was there with friends, and kind of obviously at some point I noticed her and made an effort to talk to her, and we went back to a house party. I think I'd asked if she wanted to come back, and strangely actually one of my friends jumped in the taxi with her before me, and when we got back to the party he kind of was trying his luck a little bit, but obviously at the time I was interested, so I got rid of him, and yeah, we met there, and then this mutual friend whose party we was at, kind of I said to her after that night, you know, I quite liked her. Would you get her back round? You know, give her a ring, or, you know, ask her if she'd be interested in meeting up, and yeah, we just sort of started dating from that point, really.
So at this point I'd say early 20s. Is that about right?
Yeah, so I would say, I would think I would have been about 20.
Okay.
Yeah. Maybe possibly 19, but I was around that age because when we met, she was 16, just about to turn 17. So I would say that's probably around about the age gap, I would say.
Okay. So how would you say the start of a relationship went? You got on really well, and
it was good, yeah. I mean, when I first met her, I did like her, but I'd not long come out of a relationship that ended quite abruptly, and the person that I was with prior, I did have feelings for. So when I first met my ex, I was definitely interested, but I still hadn't dealt with the previous breakup. So we dated for a little bit, and I'll be honest that I did at one point back off, and I said I'm not sure I'm ready, because I wanted the right thing, basically. I didn't want to start a relationship, get her feelings involved, and then decide that I wasn't ready for that relationship. So even though I liked her, I said, you know, I need some time, and she did try, and she was persistent, you know, in terms of like, I do like, you know, when it was almost like, you know, I know you still think about someone else, but like with the risk of sounding stupid, like I want you to choose me. Like I think we could have something. So I think, yeah, obviously over a couple of weeks we continued to have chats, and we started to meet back up again, and we started dating. I was living between my mum's and dad's at the time. So my mum lived in sort of Stretford area. My dad lived in Cadishead, which is near Earlham.
yeah.
So she lived in Warrington, which is where we'd met. So I kind of started to stay more at my dad's because it was closer to being up that way, and we started dating more, and then I got a job in Warrington, and from there started to I met a family and staying there a lot, and then they pretty much said like, you're welcome to stay here, you know, because I was travelling back and forward to work all the time, so they said, you know, you can, if you wanted to, you can stay here with us. So yeah, I think that escalated things, you know, obviously because I'd become almost part of the family quite quickly, really, and I worked up there and lived there. Yeah, so.
Okay. So How long would you say that sort of progressed in its current state, where you just kind of meeting up, dating?
We dated for a few months, and then I probably lived with her at mum and dad's, and a lot of the past I can remember, but timescales is difficult because of some of the things that happened. Obviously, you kind of forget some things. So, but I would say I probably lived with her at mum and dad's for somewhere between 6 and 12 months, and then although we were in a relationship, I got a flat in my own name because it was still early days, and I wanted to know that I had somewhere if things didn't work out, because I needed to live up there because of work. So I got a flat, but effectively we both lived in that flat. It was local to mum and dad, local area.
How was it when you moved in together?
It was good. I mean, we got on really well, but we were different, So, and I think that was maybe something that was my fault to an extent, because when I was in my sort of late teens, early 20s, I'd never really been one for going out. I'm not really a club kind of guy. I don't really like going drinking. But obviously, as a young lad, generally that's how you meet people if you want to date. So I'd go out with the group of friends and the people that I knew, and they would be big party guys. They'd go out and they'd be out all weekend. But I wasn't really into it.
Yeah.
I'd kind of just sit and have a drink and be quite chilled. So when we met, she'd met me in this crowd that was an exciting crowd that would go out a lot. But I wasn't that person. I was quite quiet. So even when we lived at mum and dad's and we moved in together, we would spend some time apart at the weekends because she'd want to go out drinking, and it wasn't really my thing. So I'd be like, I don't mind, you can go out, And I worked shifts, so sometimes I'd be working late on a Friday night. So I would work, get home, and I'd be honest, I was quite happy just to have a couple of hours doing my own thing, play a little bit of PlayStation or whatever I wanted to do, and then wait for it to get home. I wasn't one of these people that was like, you can't, we don't want you going out, or I was fine with it, and so that was something that I think she had to get used to, that I wasn't going to be a boyfriend that came out every weekend.
Yeah.
Because I just didn't enjoy it. For me, I only went out to try and meet someone. And when I met someone, and why am I going out now? There's nothing there for me anymore.
I get it. I'm the same. I'm not.
Yeah, so I'd rather go to the pub, and watch the football and have a chat than go to a club. It's noisy and not really my kind of scene, really.
So early on, other than there being differences of like one preferring to go out and you preferring to more of a relaxed style, was there any other differences or issues?
I would just say we'd have I think part of the reason why, obviously, it'd be stupid to say that I didn't like the girl and I didn't find the girl attractive, because I did when we met, and I certainly, obviously, at one point I fell in love with her. But I think there was a part of me that was, so my upbringing was different. It wasn't a smooth upbringing, and I was in a broken home. Mum and her partners drank when I was younger, and she had some partners that were quite abusive. So I'd not been around a normal life. So when I met her and I met her mum and dad, I was like, this is what a normal family is. This is a normal home. This is what I want. I want to be part of this. And I started to meet other family members, and I liked them, and I was like, this is what I want. So I think with that, I ignored some things because I was happy with where I was. So she had her first real boyfriend still sort of tried to get in touch with her quite regularly, and a couple of times he'd turned up at her mum and dad's house drunk and was outside shouting for her, and her dad would be like, you need to go out and get rid of him, and I'd be in the house like, I don't want to kick off because her dad's there and look like an idiot, but like, what am I supposed to be doing here? It was uncomfortable for me. And that happened, and then when we moved in together, there was a couple of times where there was the odd message came through, and I think that was the first time that I wasn't sure whether I could 100% trust that there wasn't anything being given to him to make him keep chasing. But there was no evidence to say anything different. And obviously, if you care about someone, you sometimes ignore some of the signs. So yeah, I think that happened, and we'd lived in that house for a while, in the apartment, sorry, and we we had our first separation while we were in that flat, and she had been going out round the friends a couple of times over the weekend, having a drink. And again, I didn't mind, you know, it's not a problem to me. But she came back one night really drunk and got straight in bed, and she'd left the phone on the side in the living room, and I was up watching a film or something, and the phone was vibrating away, and I was like, who's that? So I looked and I seen a name, and I recognised the name, but it wasn't the other guy. It was another lad who I knew the name of, but I'd never really seen him as a threat, to be honest. So I was like, what's he texting for? Like this time I'm talking like 12:30, 1 a.m, you know. So I opened the phone and looked at the message, and I can't remember the exact context, but it was something. I'm sure he called her babe or baby in the message, and there wasn't much else there. But I was like, what's that about? So I rang the number straight away, and I went, what's this message about? And this lad answered, and he knew who I was, and he was kind of stuttering his way through. He's like, oh, it's nothing. I was like, I'm not an idiot. Like I said, you can tell me the truth now, or we'll obviously have to have another chat. And he basically said that they'd been chatting when she'd been going around with his friends, because he lived local and they, you know, had the same friendship group, and she'd made out like we weren't getting on and we had problems, and you know, and he liked her and they'd kissed. That was kind of all that had happened. They'd kissed. So I confronted her about it and she admitted it. And I mean, at this point, I'd never kind of really experienced anyone kind of cheating or anything like that. You have silly things when you're young, but nothing like that. So I was heartbroken, to be honest with you. You know, I was deeply hurt, and it's just like, it's just a kiss. I'm like, it's not just a kiss. Like, you know, it's, you know, and that's only me taking his word. I don't know the truth. So, so I asked her to leave. I packed her stuff, and I told her to go back to mum and dad's, and we didn't really talk. She tried to talk a couple of times. I told her I didn't want to speak to her. I didn't want to know her. And mum and dad kind of messaged and said, like, can you not sort things out? I was like, no, you know, I'm done. And we were separated for, without speaking really, for about, and it doesn't sound long, but it is when you're in a young relationship. We were separated for, I'd guess about 6 to 8 weeks.
How long had you been together at this point? Are you talking a
year?
From
dating to that point, I'm just trying to, sometimes I have to work things out with the kids' ages, so when the kids were born. So I would say probably about 2 years.
Okay, so it's not a small amount of time.
No. And, you know, bar the odd thing, generally, those 2 years were good, you know. So this was, and the main thing that hurt me, not just, I mean, obviously I was hurt by the fact she'd kissed someone, but I was also hurt that she'd lied to someone, because she told this person we weren't getting on. I was sleeping on the sofa at the moment. None of that was true. So I was quite taken aback by that, and we didn't speak, and I tried sort of, I wouldn't say I dated, but I met a couple of people on nights out and we chatted, but nothing ever went anywhere in between. And I met someone that I thought I liked, but kind of circumstances, it didn't go anywhere. And because you try and move on, even though you're probably not ready, and it doesn't, then when that other person reaches back out, I feel like you're more responsive to it. So it was actually, it was an anniversary when we met, and I got a message like, just, I miss you. And I'd had a few drinks, I was in the pub, and I suppose maybe, I'd probably, if I'm being honest, I probably at the time felt the same, but I was trying not to, because I was still angry and hurt, and I didn't feel like I could trust her. But I reached out and we had a chat, and we agreed to meet up at some point. I think it was over the next couple of days, and we started sort of dating again. In between, when she moved out, a friend moved in with me, because obviously I had bills to pay, and he was like, "Oh, you know, I'll move in." And he was at his mum. He said, "I'll move in and we'll share the bills." So he moved in with me, and so when we started dating again, she didn't move in straight away because my friend was there, but obviously she made it clear that, you know, I'd like to, and we were dating for a little bit. I'd say the lad that lived with me, although he was a good lad, he was involved. A little bit involved in drugs and stuff like that. Not massively, but he was, you know. So we didn't, you know, that at the time she was working in a prison. So there was one day where one of the dogs in prison sat on her. You know what it means by sat on? So when the dogs will sit on you if they think you've got if they smell drugs, they'll sit on you.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's how they signal to someone. So the dog had sat on her. So basically, she had to get searched. Then obviously they found nothing, but it was because it could sense the smell. So obviously at this point, I had to chat with my mate and say, look, I can't have that sort of thing. So I think we agreed that he'd sort something out and he'd move out in a couple of weeks. She moved back in, and then quite quickly she got pregnant. So we were still quite young then, because my eldest was born in 2009, so it would have been 2008. So this is 3 years in, not quite 3 years, because we met towards the end of 2005. So it was big, obviously. You know, it wasn't.
Do you think you got over everything from the first breakup?
No. I wasn't. I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready. No. But I think I'm quite laid back, and I think my current partner would say this. Like, as some people joke and say, like, you're almost horizontal. Like, I'm quite. So when she came, I think she came to my work and kind of told me, and I was like, all right. Didn't really react, and I think she expected a big reaction, but I was kind of, well, that's all right. So I'm going to be a dad now. I wasn't, you know. I'm not a big.
Yeah.
It's just not me. So I think she was a bit annoyed because she thought I'd get this big reaction. But obviously, I had those things of like, well, I'm probably not ready, but I'll step up, because I've always wanted to be a dad. We'd not planned it. So yeah. So obviously, at this point, we were in the 1-bedroom apartment. It's just like, you know, we need to find somewhere bigger. So we looked for a house, and we rented a house. Again, not far, actually, even closer to mum and dad. So that was better with obviously having a baby, and yeah, that was kind of the next step. So while she was expecting, we moved.
Okay. What was it like in the run up once, you know, the 9 months of the pregnancy? It's your first child.
You know what? I kind of felt, if she wants to have a baby with me, she's obviously, you know, she's not going to make the same mistake again. You know, she's not going to, you know, and it's it now. You know, I wouldn't walk away from someone who was pregnant, you know, no matter how I felt. And I think I didn't want to at the time. You know, I think I believed what she told me, that it was a mistake, that someone gave her some attention. She wasn't feeling like I was giving the attention I used to, and she was young, and we'd moved in together, and it had moved really quick. And I'm like, I can understand, you know, it was convincing that was what it was. So so, you know, and I do think she wanted to obviously have a child and be with me, and yeah, we went through that. One thing she did tell me, which I can't remember which point during the pregnancy, but she told me at one point during the pregnancy that she deliberately stopped taking contraception because she wanted me to be her kid's dad, because even if we broke up, I'd be a good dad. And that bothered me, because I was like, it was that even if we broke up. So I'm like, well, I don't want to be a part-time dad. I want to have a family or not, you know. So yeah, so that, you know, again, probably I didn't feel like I could show anger because she was pregnant. So I can't start to get angry and be really, because I'm putting my child at risk if I responded like that. So I kind of just was like.
So she chose to stop taking the.
So we weren't using contraception because I believe she was on the pill, and she'd stopped taking it and not told me. So obviously then I kind of started to think, well, was that deliberate so that I didn't break up with her? You know, I didn't decide, actually, we've got back together, but it's not going to work, and I can't forgive you, because now I've got to forgive you because you're going to be the mother of my child. So it kind of it took the choice away, if that makes sense, for me to decide if I want to continue moving on, or whether, you know, I couldn't forgive. At that point, I was like, well, I'm going to have to, you know, we're going to have a baby. And
how did it sit with you that she chose not to take the contraception?
I think, like I said, it made me question the motive, but I didn't feel like, you know, if someone told me something that they'd done that was deceitful in a normal circumstance, I'd probably be quite angry with them. But I didn't feel like I could be because she was pregnant. So what sort of person would I be if I get angry at a pregnant woman? So I was just kind of, I suppose in a weird way, I wasn't shocked though. I wasn't shocked that she had told me it, which now thinking about it, I should have been, but I wasn't. And I suppose because I'd already dealt with the fact, it wasn't like she'd come to me and said, I'm pregnant because I stopped taking contraception. I'd accepted the fact that she was pregnant, I was going to be a dad before she told me why that had happened. So I'd come to terms with the fact I was having a child. And at that point now, I'd become happy, so it wasn't a negative until I thought, and probably I've thought about that more recently and since we've separated than I did then, in terms of that almost set up the life that I've had, that decision that she made then, because she made a decision consciously to, whether it's the right word or not, the reality is she tricked me into having a baby because I didn't believe it was possible at the time because there was contraception in the way. And on the back of that, we've had whatever we've had now, and I'm where I am now. Now, it doesn't mean I would change that because I'm happy with where I am now, but I maybe would have had a very different life if that didn't happen. No one can know. So someone else made a decision that changed my life without me being consulted, which is quite big.
It is.
Yeah.
So when going back to the run up in the pregnancy, how did you feel about it all?
I think I became excited. I always wanted to be a dad. I always thought I'd be a good dad. I kind of always wanted to be the dad that I didn't have. I think that's how people feel when they've maybe not had the right sort of people around and the right family environment. I was like, I want to do better. So, yeah, I was determined. I was absolutely determined to be a better dad. And we kind of, we created the nursery. We got the house ready. I got a better job, same job but more money. So I was like, I'm going to make a better life for us, because obviously I was aware that because she was in the prison service, they were quite good with maternity, but obviously she'd also made me aware she's not sure she could go back full time after the 9 months maternity had ended. So I was like, well, I've got to do something different. So I got a job that paid more.
Did you feel like your life had changed much in the run up?
No, not in the run up. I would say I got a new job which was doing the same job that I was doing, but it was supposed to be local. And then they asked me if I would cover a store in Wrexham temporarily, which was a bit of a commute. And then once I was there, they were like, we need you to stay. And now I took this job on a better salary, so I couldn't lose the job because I had a baby due. So I ended up then commuting to Wrexham and back in the build up to a baby being born. So there was times stress from her that whatever going to labour, you're so far away. I was like, well, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. What's the option there? So thankfully that didn't happen, but it did. It had an impact when my eldest was born, because he came along and I wanted to do everything I could to help. So I was doing night feeds. I got him from work and I would be straight on, I'll have him, you have a rest, you get some time to yourself. And it's it sort of joke about it now, but like even to the point where I've always been a bit of a gamer. I like playing games and stuff, and he'd be asleep on me and I'd be playing my game. He'd be asleep, because I'm happy with him there. I know he's safe. I'm doing my thing. She can go and relax or whatever. So we did that, but it did start to catch up with me so he was born.
How was it before you jump into?
Sorry.
How was it during the birthing part?
It was very clear that she wanted her mum to be very involved, and I had no issue with that because we've not really touched on it, but I had a lot of time for mum and dad. They were great. They were great with me, and I built up a good relationship with them. So I was more than happy for a mum to be there. I think I was criticised at times because there was one point apparently where I went to sleep on the floor while she was sort of early labour, but nothing was happening. So I got a dressing gown and I went to sleep for a bit and woke back up. But my mum was in the room for the labour. I was in the room, and yeah, you know, it was long. It was long, the first one, but yeah, I was happy. I was involved. I wasn't, you know, pushed out or anything like that. I was as involved as I wanted to be. And yeah, and obviously then, you know, Karen came along, and it's people go, oh, what's it like? Was it like, oh my God? It just felt normal for me, you know, kind of like, I'm not a big reaction person, so like I've prepared myself. So when he's born, it's like, oh, it was like when you first held him. What it was like? It was like I was holding my son. It wasn't like, oh my God, like life changing. Like, you know, I was ready to by that point. I'd prepared myself. I'm quite sort of strong willed, strong minded. So I don't kind of there's no overreaction to anything. I prepared myself to be a dad. I prepared the house for a bit. I prepared my life to be a dad, and when he came, I was ready. So. So yeah, it was fine.
So did you get to go home straight away? Was there any complications?
No complications as far as I'm aware. It was quite straightforward. Went home. I think as I was just moving on to a second ago, because he was born on the 27th of November. It was on 2019, so it was a year. Sorry, 2009. 2019. So it was a year that the winter was a really bad one. And I don't know if anyone would remember, but it was a really, really bad one. We had like just snow upon snow, and it was just compacting and compacting. So at the time, I had a motorbike, and that's how I got to work. And in Wrexham, the weather was even worse, so I couldn't get to work. So I ended up having to get a train. But I'd have to leave for the train at 6 a.m, get the train, work all day, get the train home. Sometimes it was delayed or cancelled because of the weather, and I was falling asleep on the train. I was just flat out, because when I was getting home, I was taking over. So what I would say is I've got photos in my head of him sat on my knee while I'm playing a game, certain things, but the first few months is almost like it was a blur. Because I was just so tired.
Did you manage to get into a bit of a routine?
I mean, the routine was literally, she would generally do the last feed before she went to bed. Or if we went to bed, we went to bed. And then if he woke up then until the morning, I did those feeds. So once or twice a night, I would obviously have that broken sleep and then be up again in the morning to get to work. So it was more difficult with the commute. Once we got through the winter and I was able to sort of travel back to work again, then that improved things, and I was able to get that extra hour sleep or whatever that, you know. But I always wanted to be involved in, you know, it wasn't like I wasn't forced to do it. It wasn't like I'm not doing them. It was like I want to do them, you know. So it wasn't an issue for me. But looking back, it did make me a bit of a walking zombie, you know. But it's nothing that a lot of parents don't go through.
Yeah.
But I just feel like it's clouded a little bit of my memory from those first few months.
So how was it, say, the first 12 months after you've got into a routine and...
So I feel like first 12 months and even beyond that were good. We got on well. You know, we were excited. We were parents, and we were working well together. We were raising a child. You know, as soon as we got to the point where the weather had improved enough that you could go out, we were out and about with him a lot, seeing people. Spent a lot of time, obviously, with her mum and dad and her extended family. And I would say the main thing with what happened before, but especially once we had the first child, was effectively her family became my family, because they just, and I know my family will say, well, you moved to Warrington, but it's not that far. But her family made more effort, you know. And for me, I'd always said that, you know, I didn't mind if, as when I grew up or when I was a young adult, I didn't see my family that much because I'm an adult. But I always thought people would make a real effort with my children. So when my child came along and people weren't rushing to come and see him, you know, they weren't wanting to. I was like, okay, you've kind of shown me how important I am by showing me how important he is. So yeah, so I kind of really become, as far as I'm concerned, that was my family. I'm not saying I fell out with my family or anything like that, but you know, her family I become much closer to them. I became, you know, really close to mum and dad. Her aunties and uncles I became a lot closer to, and we spent a lot of time with them. You know, Christmases we spent with her family. So I just kind of joined her life and left mine behind. But I was okay with it because mine wasn't great anyway.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that was it. I'd say the first sort of 12 months, and a bit beyond that was kind of it. We, again, just trying to remember dates specifically, but we lived in that house for a while before we moved. We bought a place. That was, so Kyron, my eldest, would have been still toddler.
Okay.
When we bought somewhere.
So probably a couple of years later.
Yeah. It's difficult for me to remember the exact time scales. To be fair, if I sat down and wrote it, I'd work it out. But you know, I've not got to that point. But we bought a house, and her dad and her mum were really helpful with that. They gave us a deposit, which obviously I was very grateful for, so we could get somewhere. And we moved in, and I think that was kind of the first time where there was a couple of times where comments were made of, you know, when we were trying to sort things out, or money was becoming stressful because she kind of wasn't sticking in jobs. When she was trying to go back to work, she wasn't sticking to them. That money became a bit of a stressful point. And
did you have that conversation between you, or was this just, it was happening?
She just didn't stick in jobs. You know, she said she was struggling in the prison service, and she went off from there with. She said she had postnatal depression, so she went off from there for a while. And then when they were trying to get her to go back, she wasn't going back, and it was then becoming unpaid because she'd been off for so long. And eventually, I think, I'll be honest, I wouldn't like to say whether she was dismissed or she quit, but that employment ended. I would be guessing, and I wouldn't want to do that. But she left that employment, and then she kind of got a few other jobs that kind of worked around things. She might have done night jobs, care homes or places like that, just kind of whatever would work around things. And I think that's where I felt a little bit of animosity started, because she was then kind of like, well, I've had a child and I've stayed at home and been a stay-at-home mum, so you can continue your career, and you've got this really good job, and now I've lost my career and I'm having to do these jobs that I don't really want to do. So whenever I would get sort of frustrated and say, you can't just keep quitting jobs, you know, we need that income, we need, you know, you can't just survive on mine for the lifestyle that you want, because I'm quite a simple guy, I don't need much to be happy, but she does like she likes nice things. And so I was like, I can't afford to keep being the one to pay.
It builds up, it's a lot of pressure.
Yeah, so that's where, you know, the odd comment came from, you know, oh, well, you know, my mum and dad paid for deposit on this house, those kind of comments that you kind of made me feel like what I'd done wasn't good enough, even though obviously I was trying my best, and we were trying to just trying to work through, but it was difficult. So we were trying to look at, well, what can we do to bring an income in that we think would be good at, you know, what will be a way for us to have an income that doesn't affect you being at home as much and you don't feel so. We actually we went down the fostering route, which we thought was a good idea at the time because we had a spare room.
Okay.
Karen wasn't a baby anymore, so and we we kind of, I don't know where it came from. I'll be honest with you, I don't know whether we'd seen something or we'd seen adverts, but we thought, that's something that you could do, which doesn't affect home life because you just added another child to the home, but it's also giving someone that care that they're not getting elsewhere. And so we both kind of got on board with it and said, I'll help as much as I can alongside my job. But effectively that would become her employment because she would be there more. We went through the process of that.
How long did that take?
It wasn't that long, actually, to be fair. I can't remember exactly how long, but we went on a few different courses and we had interviews and stuff like that. And, we had a lot to offer, we to offer a child on the surface. We did. So we ended up getting the intention, to be honest, was always to have a younger child. But we went down the route of a private agency rather than a local authority because local authority don't pay great. So we went down the route of private company, and they obviously, when you go through it, they tell you it'll be great, what they don't tell you is the reason that they pay more is because they get the children that don't get placed with the local authority generally. So if they're difficult to place, the local authority can't place them. They'll go to an agency who will try and find carers that they pay more because they're willing to take different children. So we ended up with a child that was 11, 12, but she thought she was older, in terms of she would want to get piercings and stuff like that. And she still had contact with mum, but mum wasn't a very good role model, so that was limited. But she would have calls, and initially she came to us and she wasn't in a good place, in terms of just didn't look after herself and attitude wasn't great and stuff. But over time that improved and really started to be positive, and she started to have a good relationship with the little one, and we went from there really, and she became part of the family, she did. And then unfortunately she started to want to be around, so she wasn't from the local area, she's from an area just outside, and she started to want to go back to that area more after school and stuff like that, and we had to restrict that because she was going to see family she shouldn't be seeing. And then that's when she started to decide, I'm not happy, so she'd start to just leave the house. And it's strange, I think people don't understand if they haven't fostered, is you have to look after the child, but you can't control them in the way you would your own child. So if they say they're leaving, you can't lock the door. You have to let them leave. So then you have to report them as running away to the police, and the police will. So there was times when she'd say, I'm going. I'd be like, well, you're not. And she's like, I am. Let me out.
So you don't have that?
Well, you can't physically control, because then you put yourself at risk of being accused of doing something wrong. So you would have to, try and talk, but if the talking doesn't work, you have to allow. So, and obviously at her age, she was, she wasn't a baby, so a toddler would be very different, but a girl that's becoming a teenager is different. So she would then leave, but she wouldn't go anywhere. She would kind of just sit across the road at the bus stop, and you'd have to kind of just keep watching to make sure she was safe. But then you've got your own child to look after. So it started to become more of a problem, really, rather than a positive thing. And we tried going to a lot of meetings and trying to sort of get her to want to be with us. We had her with us for not far off a year before eventually they allowed her to go back to an old placement that they'd always said she wasn't allowed to go back to, but eventually they kind of gave in because it was the best option they could come up with to keep her safe. And then we were looking at getting another placement. And then she fell pregnant.
Okay.
Not the child. So she fell pregnant, and although they don't say you can't continue to foster when there's someone in the house pregnant, because of the fact that it wasn't local authority and it was children that generally had more behavioural problems, the risks were much higher. So every time they talked to us about a placement, And there was, what risks are there? Oh, this child's through something at a previous, carer, or they've hit out. Well, we can't risk that because obviously she was pregnant.
Also, it's used that we're putting the restrictions in, not so much them.
Bit of both.
Okay.
They would not offer certain people, certain children, but then other ones they would say it's up to you. This is the behaviours. It's your decision. On whether you think it's a safeguarding issue for yourselves or not. Obviously, if there was, because we had a child in the house, if there was any children that had certain behaviours that could have been detrimental to the child, that would be different. But majority of them weren't. I'll be honest, most children I found that we were offered had more shown aggression towards adults than other children. That was more common. So yeah, we got stuck with that. We'd been trying for a while, and you have to keep having appointments with your worker and go to catch up training and stuff, but we weren't getting placements, so we weren't getting any income from it. So eventually we just kind of made a decision that we had to resign from doing it because we couldn't have anyone, and it was taking up time that wasn't useful. So then obviously that decision came on the back of, now we've got however long of no income from one side, because you can't get maternity from being a foster carer. So we'd kind of lost, and when we were foster caring through the agency, I think it's £1,500 a month, the income, which is when it's just for continuing the life you're doing is a good second income to have coming in. You still obviously have to provide for the child, but there's some extra income there, and that was just gone. So again, I felt that put a lot of pressure on me. I've jumped forward past something that's quite important actually. If I just go back a little bit.
So whereabouts is this that you want to go over?
So before, I'm trying to put the position for exactly
what's it that you're covering.
So she had an affair, and I'm trying to put into place whether that was prior to the fostering, because it was certainly prior to the second child. And the reason I know that is because I left and I took the eldest with me on the night that I found out.
How did you find out?
Obviously, there was no other children. So I was sat next to her actually on... and a message popped through. No, sorry, that's not true. That's a different one. That's a different one. Yeah, sorry. There's a couple. Okay. So actually, no, she was in bed, and I think it was something like she was logged in on the laptop or something like that on her Facebook, and a message popped up, and so she'd been spending a lot of time with a friend, a new friend, different friend that I actually quite liked. Quite liked her friend. She was all right, but she'd been spending a lot of time with her, and so she'd ended up having an affair with this friend's boyfriend's brother.
Okay.
So obviously when she'd been going to see this friend and her boyfriend's been there, I wasn't aware that there was a brother around a lot. So that one was different to the first one in terms of I was a lot more angry rather than hurt, because we had a child, and I was like, "What are you doing?" So I went upstairs. She was in bed. I woke her up. I remember there was a glass of water on the side, and I threw the water out of the glass onto her, and said, "Get up," and then I threw the glass on the bed. And I remember, and obviously I told her what I was angry about, and rather than any sort of recognition of what she'd done, the first thing she started to do was accuse me of throwing a glass at her head, which I'd not done. Categorically, I threw the water on her and then threw the glass on the bed. So obviously I said, "What's happened?" I called her a few names, you this, you that, and I said, I'm taking you with me. You don't deserve to be a mum with what you've done. Well, and I took him, and I actually went to her family's, because it was kind of the only place I knew where to go. So I went to I went to her auntie's and I spent the night there.
She didn't have an issue with you taking the child?
I didn't really give her a choice. I just took him.
'Cause that's normally what I've heard previously, where more issues come from.
Well, she said, "You're not taking him," and I said, "You're not stopping me," and I took him. And I went. She didn't know where I'd gone. I went to her auntie's. I knocked on. I told them what had happened. They could I stayed with my little boy on downstairs on the sofas for the night. Got up in the morning and I obviously spoke to them, calmed down, went back and I said, "I don't want you here. I don't want you in the house, and I'm keeping Kyron here. You're not taking him. This is where he lives." So obviously initially she was arguing about it, but I think I spoke to her mum and dad, and they said, "Look, you need to give him space. Like, come to ours." And she didn't want to leave the kid, and I was like, "Well, you're not getting the choice. Like, I've done nothing wrong. Why should I lose him? I've not made the decision. You have." And to be fair, at the time, my mum and dad, kind of backed me up and said, "You need to give me space. Like, you come ours. He can keep him there, and give him a couple of days, and then have a chat." And I bet that was difficult, that one, because we did stay separated, and if I'm being completely honest, I don't know what I did in terms of work and having my son, because I was working, but I had my son, so I can't remember how I made that happen.
You mean with going to?
Well, I don't know. Whether I just had time off work, maybe I booked some time off for a couple of weeks, or I had family helping, because I wasn't willing to take him there and leave him there, because I thought she would take him and I wouldn't get him back. So when I went round to take him to see his mum, I would stay there. At mum and dad's, I would just kind of go to the living room and just leave them for a bit. And that was the hardest part, was taking him to see her and seeing, even though I was angry with her, and I was so angry, seeing the hurt that she had, I felt guilty, because she was hurt because I was taking him from her, but at the same time, it was her fault. So I would go around quite regularly. I'd take him to see him, and I think eventually he would stay there, and we kind of, he still lived with me, but he would go there, and we had quite a lot of conversations, and I think it's just honest to say that there was points where she generally begged me to forgive her. I'm stupid, I don't know what I was doing. Similar excuses to previously, like, I've just been struggling. I don't feel good. It was stupid. I got attention, and I was kind of like, I was adamant I wasn't listening, but every single time I took him around and I took him away, and I kept seeing, it become harder and harder. And I spoke to family, and I'll be honest, I'm really close with my cousin. We're almost like brothers. And I spoke to him about all this, what I took, because I went round to his a lot, because he had a little boy similar age. So I went round there a lot and took my lad to play with his lad, and kind of a bit of a support bubble, really. And he was adamant, you can't forgive her. Like, it's twice now, whatever the level of it is, it's twice that this has happened. Like, you can't forgive her. You make sure you don't, like, lose Kyron, and if you ever get back with her, I'll fall out with you. And unfortunately, I didn't listen. When I say unfortunately, as I said before, I wouldn't go back, but he was right. But it just become harder and harder as time went by to keep saying no. And I think her mum, not so much her dad. Her dad was really angry with her, actually. He was very much of the opinion that she was, I mean, he called her names, you this, you that, what are you thinking? You've got a son, why would you do that? It's pathetic the way you behave. But her mum wasn't quite the same. She was more sympathetic, I think, towards the fact that she'd made a mistake, even though she still didn't agree with it at the time. But I think some of her mum and dad and other family members kind of put a bit of pressure on me to say she knows she's done wrong. Like, you can't break your family up over this. Like, she doesn't want to be with anyone else. She wants to be with you. And again, like, kind of over time, I kind of started to believe what people were saying, you know, because I still, at the time, I still loved her. I was just hurt. So, and obviously I had a little boy, so I didn't want to break that up. So that happened again around. So that was prior to the fostering, because again, a lot of the stress was, I feel like I've got nothing, I've got no life, I just stay at home, I've got no job, and then obviously that was kind of when we started to look for things. So that's where that fitted into the story. I don't know if you want me to move back onto where I was, or if you've got any questions about.
No, I guess we can go back to. I'm trying to think whereabouts it was.
Some of the other,
it was
so
after
she
the
was
foster
pregnant.
parent. Yeah.
Yeah. So she got pregnant, and again, if I'm being completely honest, that time I was kind of like, this is what happens.
So in between your foster caring, you've got this in the background where this has all taken place.
So obviously the affair happened. We'd got back together. We'd started doing the fostering and so on, and then not long after, she got pregnant. So she got pregnant while we were still fostering, but we didn't know at the time. And obviously when the fostering ended, that's kind of when she said...
Had you got over the first time that all the cheating took place?
I don't think... You know what, the first time it was... Because it was... I never knew whether anything happened other than a kiss. I was able to forgive that.
Yeah.
Because I could see from that first time, even now if I'm being... I mean, without taking any... And bitterness isn't the right word, but taking any of my feelings away of what's happened in our life, that time, we met when she was really young. We moved in together, first person she'd ever lived with. So I could understand why she might have been like, oh, I'm missing out on my life that I used to have. But when we had a little boy, we had a family, we bought a house, I was working hard to provide for that family. I was the only person bringing in an income. For you to then disrespect me, and I don't mean this in an arrogant way, because I'm.
You have responsibility at that point.
I'd like to think I'm a decent looking guy, and I seen this guy, and he wasn't a decent looking guy, and he didn't have a good job. He was a bit of a down and out, and I was like, that's what you're willing to lose me for, and a family for that. Is that how low you rate what you've got? So yeah, I think it was much harder the second time round, and I think the difference the difference between what's happened there and what I'll go on to a bit later on is when I found out about both of these occasions, it was, please don't leave me. It didn't mean anything. It was stupid. Like, I only want you. It was like instant. I could see she regretted it. You know, I'm not saying that, you know, that it was, I don't know if it was genuine, but I felt it was, that she regretted what she'd done and she didn't want to lose me or the family or anything like that. So, yeah, as I say, you know, I forgave her, or forgot, maybe is the better word, and we did the fostering, which obviously become a big focus. So you kind of forget because you're busy. You know, when I'm getting in, I've got things, and so we did that, and then we ended up having.
How was the run up at having the second child as opposed to the first? Was there any difference?
No, not really. I mean, it was a case of I know what I'm doing. I know what happens. You know, I know I felt more prepared because obviously we had a home. We had, we had extra bedrooms in the home. I had, I think the only thing that really put a strain on me, but I kept it to myself, was we've got a second baby due, all the things you need for a baby, and I'm the only person bringing money in. But, well, we'll say, and I've got lots of positive things to say about her family, some more negative things more recent, but overall in the past they have always been good, and they really helped. You know, they bought pram and all these kind of things that cost a lot of money, so they, you know, they were really supportive, and they always were with the children. But it was, I think I just hid the, you know, I hid it. But every time that, you know, I mean, I knew I earned good money, but that paycheck didn't go that far. And then what was happening was I was kind of going, there was some months where she was saying she needed things and I didn't want to say no. So I would get them, but then I'd be putting petrol in my car with a credit card because I had no petrol and I had no money left. But I wouldn't tell anyone. I'd just be like, I'll sort it out. I'll earn more money. I'll do this. You know, things will change. So I kind of just almost went into survival mode with that and just kind of did what I had to do. But obviously what happens there is it starts to build up a little bit, which is then added stress because you like seeing these numbers that you know you've got to pay back at some point, but you're not quite sure how, but you think you will. I'll work it, you know, because I always work it out. That's the way I, you know, kind of think I'll work it out. So that was the main thing really from the second one, is that the build up was just more stressful financially, but I felt ready. You know, I was happy. Again, it wasn't planned, but it wasn't prevented. You know, in terms of that. So that was 2013. So May. He was born. And again, sort of everything was fine. It was exciting. Eldest was excited. He's got a little brother, and you know, we didn't really.
Did everything settle down into a normal, like, routine, and you felt like a family again, or?
Yeah, I think so. You kind of think, you convince yourself she wouldn't do this. She wouldn't have another baby and do the same thing. You know, she wouldn't. Surely that's it. And you know, so we kind of just went back to family life and forgot what had happened, and I just had to trust her again. And you know, if you want to go out, I'm not going to be that person. I don't want to. And I was quite open that I'm not going to say you can't go out. You make your own decisions, you know. But obviously, at the time, I was like, I wouldn't accept it happening again. You know, that's what you say. What else are you going to say? You know. So yeah, we.
Everyone's going to do what they're going to do.
Yeah,
you can't actually control anyone.
Born in May 2013, went through a period of sort of normal family life. Jobs might have changed around that point because I've kind of always tried to get. If I get offered a job for more money, I'll take it because I need it. You know, so it wasn't always for me. My career wasn't always about what I liked to do. It was what is going to pay me enough to provide. So I made some decisions where I took jobs thinking it would be better for me, and they weren't. So I ended up going backwards and kind of jumped back and forward. But it was always trying to either get a job that paid more or a job that gave me more time with the family. Kind of trying to find what was the best, what did I need.
Was she still staying at home? Was there a point where she managed to get into work?
It was the same as before, kind of sometimes getting jobs, but they never lasted. It was then kind of, I've got a job working in like a preschool club, so I can take the kids with me, and then they can go to school, and I can, so it doesn't affect. So these kind of things, I know, I do genuinely think in her head she was trying to find something. She just wasn't motivated to stay with anything for whatever reason that was. So we had my younger boy in 2013 May, and she then, not far after having him, fell pregnant again. So we had a little girl who was born December 2014. So there's not a drastic gap between one being born and then another one being conceived. So obviously there wasn't really a lot of time for anything to go wrong, if that makes sense. You know, kind of, we'd had a child, we'd gone through kind of raising him, getting into a certain age, and then I'm pregnant again. So there was this really long window of, I would say generally, we had arguments like anyone does, but there was nothing major where it was like she'd done something major wrong, or we just kind of, I think the main thing was through that period, again, the next pregnancy building up, I think the main thing that we kind of was like, we want to have a girl, you know, because we've got 2 boys, we want to have a little girl. And for me in my head, then I'm like, well, that's everything I've kind of wanted, you know, like I've always wanted at least a boy and a girl. I've kind of got that. So we had the early scan, and it was a girl. So we, you know, it was like kind of perfect. And I thought, you know, that was it then, you know. So we went through that. She was born.
Was there
Everything
any
was-
any
sorry.
complications or?
No, not really any complications with any of them, to be honest with you. Quite lucky with that. I think the only things that we had is on the odd pregnancy, there was a little bit of sort of, she was concerned about a little bit of early bleeding. I think with at least one of the children, she was at high risk of preeclampsia, so there was a lot of appointments. But I was always there. I was always supportive. You know, she had to go and get injections for one of them at the hospital, so we went to that together. And but there was never any, you know, no drastic complications or anything that would be traumatic, you know. So I think we were quite lucky in that respect. So yeah, my little girl was born end of 2014. And then it was great for a while.
Did you go back to again a normal life? now
Yeah,
with
you know,
3
obviously
kids?
she still tried, you know, she liked to go out every now and then, but not anything major. And then we kind of just got to a point in, my little girl started nursery, and just got to a point where she was going out more. You know, it was a bit, and it wasn't just, she'd always been one to go out and get drunk. She didn't go out for a drink, she'd get drunk. She'd come in wasted. But it got to the point where it was like coming in and paralytic, like throwing up, and I was like, you can't keep doing this. We've got family, like, you know, being hungover all weekend. That's like our time together. I've been working all week, and so that started to cause arguments. And I was like, you know, she'd be lying on the sofa hungover on a Saturday, and I'd be like, you're selfish. It's just selfish. Like, what? So we'll go out now. We'll have a day without you because I'm not like, keeping the kids in all day. And so that become almost like a regular thing, that just going out, getting wasted, coming in. And I kind of, it got to a point where I just had a feeling something wasn't right. I'd done it before, I'd been in, I started to see the signs, and it was quite early. So actually, again, I've jumped, but this is the problem because there's so much going on. So I've jumped a little bit, but not drastically. So I said, my little girl started nursery. She'd not started nursery at this point. She was still baby. And I wanted to do something for myself a little bit. I want to do something. So there was a charity boxing, like ultra white collar boxing, raising money for cancer research. So I was like, I want to do it. She's like, yeah, do it. It'd be great. So yeah, great. So we started training for that. And then so when she was younger, when she was 18 actually, which is very young, she had breast implants when she was 18. And one of them ruptured after she had the third child, or it turned or something, so there's a problem with it. And basically she went to NHS and they said, oh, we'll take it out, but that's it. So obviously, like, she's going to be left not looking right, if that's the best way to describe it. So so she was like obviously distraught about this, and I was like, what's the options? So she's like, well, I spoke to mum and dad, and basically there was different clinics that she could go to, and they would reconstruct and replace. So she's like, you know, I really can't have him just take it out, like, I don't know what to do. So again, kind of, I was like, we'll pay for it. Like, we'll get it done. So I think it cost about $5,000, and I credit card or a loan, I can't remember what it was, put it on that. So she had that done, and obviously little one's still young. She's still waking up in the middle of the night, whatever. So I've started this training which said that I could do. But then there was one day, And I was like, I've got training at 7. And she'd come back out. So when she went in to have the operation, I'd got called to say she's having some extra bleeding, but I had the kids. So I was like, right, what is it like? No, it said it should be all right, but I'm just scared. I'm like, well, is your mum there? Yeah, your mum's there. Right, well, let me know what's going on. And I don't know what else I'm supposed to do. I've got the children at home. But anyway, she comes back into the home, and I'm like, I've got training, like I'm going. She's like, well, what could do with you not going training? I'm like, well, I'm fighting in a few weeks. Like, I don't want to get knocked out. I need to train. Like, yeah. And she's like, well, what about if she wakes up? I was like, well, you can pick her up. No, they told me not to pick anything heavy up. I'm like, she's a baby. It's nothing heavy. You don't. It's that you don't care about me, selfish. I'm like, got a minute. Where's this coming from? So she's, and then on that I'm selfish. I'm like, look, I'm going training. It's 1 hour, a couple of nights a week. That's for me. That's all I do. I've never done anything for myself. I'm focused. I'd been training. I'd been eating the right food. I was doing everything right. I'm like, I'm going to the training. Like, if she wakes up in this hour, that's unlucky. But even if she does, you're capable of picking her up. Like, it's not gonna, you're not gonna rip apart from picking a baby up. So, and I'm saying baby. She wasn't a baby, but she was young. And so I went to my trainer, and kind of thought nothing of it. And I'd say probably maybe a week, 2 weeks later, I sat on the sofa. I was watching a film with her, and her phone beeped, and she kind of turned it over dead quick. I was like, what was that? She said, it's nothing. I went, show me what that was. She said, no, it's nothing. And she was like, adamant she wasn't showing me. I was like, just show me what it was. Like, now, I'm not stupid. And she went, well, she said, basically, I'll show you because you're not gonna let me not show you, basically. Like, so basically, this lad had messaging her, like, flirty messages. So I was like, what's that about? And like, obviously, well, it wasn't that calm, but and effectively, I got this story of, she'd put this status on Facebook on that night that I went to training about how I was selfish, this rant on Facebook, and I'm like, so I ignored it at the time, but someone she went to school with had seen it, and he's done I'll jump into the DMs.
Yeah.
If I was your boyfriend, I wouldn't leave you on your own. That's disgusting, blah, blah, blah. And she's obviously started communicating back and forward over time without obviously me being aware. So obviously I've kicked off, like gone mad, and she's like, it was just like, and to be fair, there wasn't any, she'd not met him, there's nothing in it, but I was still annoyed. I was like,
so it starts.
Yeah, so I was like, she's like, I'll block him, like, it was stupid, it was just, it was when I put that post on, like, she knew what it was from. So I was like, oh, okay. I mean, obviously I wasn't just like, okay, that's great, let's just get on, but I was like, well, block him, don't unblock him.
Yeah, but would she have blocked him if you want to found out?
Well, exactly, yeah.
And that's the important bit.
So, but again, it's difficult because, and people will say, oh, well, you forgive her. I had 2 boys and a little girl in bed upstairs. You can't. It's easy to say you should have done this, but you weren't living it. So I can't remember exactly, but I kind of we moved past it sort of, but I still had a feeling. Still something wasn't right. And we went on for a little while. And then I can't remember if it was a message or a comment on something on Facebook or something like that, but it was this lad, the name, I recognised the name. I was like, what's going on there? Like, thought you blocked him. And it was like, and then she's like, oh, what's I said, why is he messaging you? And she went, oh, like, so he wasn't living, when he'd messaged you, he was living in Leeds. And then it came out, and I can't remember how it came out, but it came out he'd moved back to Warrington. And I was like, you'd not thought to mention that? Because they had the same friends from school and stuff like that. And she's like, well, no, like, it doesn't mean anything, like, I've not met him for anything like that. And I'm like, well, you might make sure you don't. And kind of, I just had a feeling that something was kind of going on. And again, I think it was probably a few months, and something popped up somewhere, whether it was a message or WhatsApp or something like that, and I found it, and it it wasn't much, but it was enough to make me question. It was just like a normal message, like, where were you or what you're doing or something like that. And I was like, whose number's that? And she's like, and like, she deleted it. And I was like, it's just like, it's nothing. And she just tried to like, she just made no sense, but she was trying to talk away out of what it was. Like, I don't know what it was. I just deleted it because I didn't know what it was. And I was like, so, but obviously the number was gone, so I couldn't ring it. I couldn't do anything. And she was just really on edge for the rest of that night. And obviously she could tell I was annoyed, but she was just being really funny, like something different. I was literally about to get in bed, and she just starts crying. What are you crying for? And she's like, I can't lie anymore. Like about what? She's like, that number. I was like, yeah. She said it was that lad. I was like, right, okay. She's like, I've been seeing him. So this was different because she chose to tell me, if that makes sense. Because at that point, so I'm like, what do you mean you've been seeing him? So she started saying like, I've been meeting up with him. Like when I've been telling you I've been here, I've been there. And I'm like, what? So obviously I'm like, what's going on? And this is where, when I said before, those times she was like, I want you to forgive me. This time she was like, I just don't know what I want. I was like, what do you mean? She went, I don't know, my head's all over the place. I'm going to go to my mum's. So obviously, I was like, I was angry, so I didn't want her to stay, but I was also kind of a bit taken aback, like, I'm going to go. You know, that was kind of a bit of a shock to me. So she went to her mum's. We talked, again, same thing, talked to our family, and I think she kind of, it was like, I don't know what, my head's all over the place, I don't know what I want. And I was like, well, that's not, I can't live with that. That's not life, doesn't work like that. And there's a couple of things that happened through that period that even now I still struggle to understand, because there's lots of things that I'll talk about where I think she's made bad decisions as a partner, but also sometimes as a mum. But I never doubt, and I still don't doubt that she loves her children. Don't doubt that whatsoever. But she made some decisions back then that aren't the actions of someone that loves their children. And one of them was we were arguing, because obviously this was still an ongoing thing of, you know, is it still going on? What's happening? I don't know. Like, I don't know what I want. But we were still in the house. She'd come back to the house and we were still there, but we weren't really together. We were just in the house. And I was running a bath from a little girl. And we're arguing, and my head's obviously all over the place. And I've gone to put her in the bath, and I've only put hot water on. So I've just dunked her legs in. She screamed, pulled her out, realised what I've done, cold water on straight away, just running her under it, and eventually took her out. And she's come upstairs. What have you done? You know, and I've got hold of her, and I'm like, she's fine. And I checked, like, nothing had raised. It had kind of gone down. So I'm like, I think she'll be all right, but I'm going to keep an eye on her. If I can see anything, I'm going to take her to hospital. And she went out.
But she just left the house.
Now, she's someone who's always had really bad health anxiety and panics about the kids if they get a cough or a cold or anything. And I've just dunked our child, who's a toddler, in a boiling hot bath, and you've left. You've gone out. And I was like, I don't know what's going on here. Like, this is, like, totally, having an affair is selfish. I get that. But this was beyond that. It was kind of like, she was so focused on something else that she was forgetting her other responsibilities as well.
I get you.
And things that I would never have expected her to. Any other time, she would have gone, I'm going nowhere, give her me, I want to make sure she's okay. But that wasn't there. And I was like, something has changed, like, mentality-wise, something's changed massively here. So I was like, ringing later on that day, where are you? What are you doing? And she's like, oh, I'm going to go to a couple of her friends' names. Can't remember the names, but not really relevant for the naming them anyway. But we're going to go to the beach for a barbecue. It's someone's birthday. We're on a barbecue on the beach. I'm like, what are you on about? It's like a Friday night. And I'm like, well, go to the barbecue on the beach. Like, kids are at home. Like, she's like, I just need some time. puts phone down. So I'm like, so anyway, gets quite late that night. And I had a couple of her friends' numbers. So it gets to late and I'm like, not heard nothing. So I'm ringing a friend. One of her friends eventually rings me back on her phone and says like, she's with her, she's okay, but she doesn't want to come home. She just needs some space. I'm like, what the fuck? Get on the phone. What do you mean she needs some space? Like, what are you on about? She's like she won't come home. Like, you just need to give her some space. Like, honestly, it's the best thing to do. And I'm like, I've got 3 kids here. What do you mean? Just give her some space. Like, I've got work. Like, cause I worked in sales, so I didn't always have the weekends off, you know. So I'm like, you can't just not come home. Like, it's not. She's a mother. Like, and basically, no, she won't come on the phone. Her friends were like, she's not coming home, and it came out whether it was from one of her friends or when she got back. But basically, she'd stayed at like this caravan for the weekend with her friends. It later came out that this lad was also at the caravan. So obviously when she came back, we sat down and it was a heavy conversation. It was just basically like, what? And she's just like, I was like, do you want to be with this other person? Like, what do you mean? She's like, I don't know. I said, do you love him? She said, I think so. I was like, right. I said, well, that's a decision. That's a decision. Like, we have to work out what we're going to do. But then when I get to the point where I kind of was willing to work out what we do, she would say, I don't want to lose my family. And it was kind of, so she was saying to me like, it's over, I'm not going to see him anymore, you know, and I know you can't forgive me straight away, but hopefully you will. Like, just please let me come back to the house. And so she came back, but I wouldn't say we kind of got back to a relationship, but there was still times when this guy kind of popped up. Like, she'd go on a night out with her friends and she'd ring me. And this is where she kind of almost convinced me to trust her, because she'd ring me saying, I'm out, I'm here, he's turned up, I'm coming home. I'm getting in a taxi, I'm coming home. So then she'd come home. And things like that happened a few times. And then she'd get home and she'd get calls from like a withheld number. She'd answer it and it'd be like this lad, and she'd be like, I've told you, leave me alone. So I was started thinking, I'm believing her because I'm seeing this. But then she had a friend come up to ours, and this friend from some other area, but she knew the same group of friends. So she knew them, but she lived like Oldham way, I think, somewhere like that. So she came up, she said, oh, can you stay at ours? We're going to go out. I was like, yeah, of course you can. So they went out into town. I was at home. And her and a friend were supposed to be coming back and staying at ours. And then a friend turns up on her own. I'm like, where is she? I don't know. What do you mean you don't know? I don't know where she's gone. Like, I lost her and I've come back. Is she not here? I'm like, are you winding me up? Like, where is she? She's like, honestly, I don't know where she is. So the night's going on. A mate's there on my sofa, and I'm like, what is going on? Like, no explanation. I can't get hold of her. We're talking early hours in the morning now. I don't know what's going on. And now by this point, a mate's trying to ring her, like, I don't know where she is, don't know what's going on. And eventually, a mate's phone rings. And she's like, and obviously I can just hear part of the conversation. I can hear mate going, what do you mean? And basically, she had ended up leaving town with this lad. This lad, they were in a taxi. This lad wanted her to come home with him and tell me that they'd still been seeing each other and that she'd been lying to me. She wouldn't do that. So they were driving down main road in Warrington in this taxi, and this lad tells the taxi driver, let him out, stop, we're getting out here. And she's like, no, we're not. And he's like, yeah, we are. And eventually the taxi driver said, you need to get out. So they got out of the taxi. And they'd got out of the taxi near to where they started the night. And this friend had a car that she'd left at a pub because they'd gone out drinking. but she'd left the keys in my ex's handbag. And this lad knew that. So he then said, we'll go in and get in the car. But they're both drunk. So, and I've got this story now, third party. But the story is that he's got in the car. He is absolutely wasted. He's threatening that he's going to do this and that in the car. So she's took the keys off him. And she's drove. They've then been driving up the main road. He's apparently pulled the handbrake up at some point while they're driving. They've nearly crashed. So she's pulled off onto a side street and they've had a big argument in the car to the point where he's somehow smashed the car up inside the car while they've been arguing. And then someone's called the police and they've jumped out the car and gone and hid. Police have found them. That's then when she's rang her friend.
When the police are turning up?
When the police are there, because she's obviously said, can I just ring?
Oh.
Can I make a phone call before you arrest me? So I'm sat there in disbelief at what I've just been told. And a friend then gets a phone call. It's the police. Obviously, her car's been taken. They're like, have you given permission for this car to be driven? No, absolutely not. Are you aware that they had the key? Yeah, it was left in the bag, but she wasn't supposed to drive it. So the police said, where are you? So then I've got the police at my house middle of the morning, come to interview. Well, they come to speak to me to tell me what had happened a little bit.
I was going to say, yeah, because you're not really involved in it.
Yeah, but just to explain where she is, and they'd basically come more to interview her friend to say, have you given permission? So I effectively got a phone call. I had to ring work, tell work can't go in. I rang her mum and dad in the morning, I think, told them. They came round. And it still feels like it wasn't real. But I remember going to pick her up from the police station in the morning. And I remember what she said. She walked out of the police station and she walked to the car, and I just looked at her, and I'll be honest, I looked at her in pure disgust.
Did she get charged with twacking?
She was charged with taking the vehicle without consent, drunk driving, and something else. I can't remember what the other charge was. But she looked at me and she said, I know, you don't need to say anything. And I went, I don't want to say anything, just get in the car. So I took her home. Mum and dad obviously had words with her. There was sort of conversations, and effectively, her mum and dad said, for different reasons, but they basically said, you stay away from him. Like, look what he's doing, the trouble he's causing, like what you're getting involved in, like. So it was difficult for me because then she started to tell me things about him, and he was a big drug taker, quite aggressive, and now I'm getting scenarios in my head, and I'm like, if I leave her now, is he going to be around my kids? Is that what I'm leaving? So as much as everybody around me was like, you can't forgive her, I was like, the children now are 15, 11 and 10. So there's not a big age gap. So back then my youngest was 1, maybe 2, pushing 2. So to leave children of that age, especially a child that can't even talk to me if anything's wrong, and potentially have them around someone like that, I just couldn't. I couldn't. And again, people say, well, why couldn't you keep the children? How do I provide for those children? How do I work? Because I'd have to quit my job there and then instantly. And I'd get some support, but it wouldn't pay my mortgage. So it's like, it's easy to talk about, you should have initially and that, but when you're in it and you live in it, and I'll be honest, at this point, my life was a blur. I didn't know what was going on. It had escalated to a point now where there's some guy, I don't even feel like I know the person that I'm with, I've jumped past something that isn't well, it probably is a big thing, but it doesn't change the story I've told. But at this point, we were married.
Okay.
It's quite a big fact. So not only had we had,
I've got to say we can go back to that.
yeah.
part.
So we got married in 2015.
How old were your kids at this point then?
So my little girl was small enough that she was being carried on pictures and so on. So it's quite important, actually, I think, because if I'm being honest, in the build up to us getting married.
Well, before that,
yeah.
How did you actually propose?
It was at. I'll be honest. It sounds bad, but I don't really want to relay it.
Okay.
Because it's.
I'll leave it if you want.
No, it was at home, and I involved some of the family and so on. But in terms of the specifics of it,
yeah, it was just private sort of thing.
Yeah, and it's difficult because obviously, for me, it's important that I don't talk about things that might upset other people. But you know, I put thought into it like I would do with anything. I didn't do it off the cuff when I proposed. The proposal was quite far beyond before we got married. We were engaged for a while, but so we got married in 2015, and the reason why it's important to point that out is it was 6 months later that she had this most latest affair. So we had a young family. We had a still kind of baby girl. We'd been married for 6 months, and then she starts a major affair. And my head was gone. I was like, I don't understand. Like, I kind of thought this was it now, you know. I thought we got married because this is what you wanted. We'd forgot what had happened before. We'd moved on from it. And I think the build up to getting married, we were arguing. And I remember some mornings driving to work thinking, we shouldn't be getting married.
What was you arguing about? Was it just general stuff?
It was,
money?
again, it was, some days she'd say she's struggling with the kids. Can you take a day off? I'm like, I can't just take a day off. And I'd get, you're a selfish, do I swear on these or not?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're a selfish cunt, you this, you that. And I'd be like, are you having a laugh? I'm going work. I'm not going for a day out. I've got work. So it would be a lot, but we just, sometimes just the way we spoke to each other, I wouldn't speak to my current partner like that. You know, and we were arranging a wedding and we were calling people names that you wouldn't call each other. And I think because she'd started going out and stuff again, and obviously in the build up to the wedding, I think I started to realise when we were getting close to the wedding, I've never forgave you for what you've done, and now I'm marrying you. And I just think there was a lot of pressure because her family had put money into the wedding, paying for things, and it was all booked.
Once you start, it's hard to go back.
Yeah, so it was kind of like, and then you think, well, we're just going for an argumentative. Just, you know, we've got little ones. It's stressful. But now when I look back and I think, I'm like, I knew it was wrong, but when I asked her to marry me, I wanted to marry her. When we got married, I think I did it because I felt like it was the right thing to do. I don't remember standing there, oh my God, I love you, I'm so happy we're getting married. I would hope that when I marry again, I would be more emotional. You know, just more in kind of... It was almost like... it was always like I was giving her wedding day. And don't get me wrong, there was elements where I picked certain things and stuff like that. I was allowed to be involved. It wasn't just, you're not interested, but it was... I felt like she was having what she always wanted. And I wanted her to have that, but I didn't feel like this is forever. But I still said I do, which is, I think it's wrong, if I'm being honest, but I felt like I couldn't go backwards. And And on a day you kind of forget about all this. But I just know there was days where I was questioning on the build up, and I don't think you should be. You certainly shouldn't be questioning whether you want to get married when you're about to get married. And I think, I mean, we've never really spoke but about this, but maybe she'd say the same, that there was days where she kind of questioned it. But yeah, so following on from that, the reason why I think that was so important is I was all over the place mentally. I was struggling to eat when this all happened. I was going into work. I wasn't performing the way I did. People were like, I'd spoke to people in work. They knew what had happened.
It's totally understandable. There's a lot that's taken place.
And they were talking to me and they were trying to help. And she told me that it was ended. She wouldn't speak to him. Obviously, this had happened. The mum and dad had said stay away from him, and kind of we were just kind of getting through things, but we were still arguing a little bit. And I remember I was in work one day and I got a message through on Facebook from one of my best friend's partners, and she said, "I'm really sorry, but I feel like you should know we lost Mike last night." And this was one of my best friends. We worked together. We're really close. And I don't cry, really. It's not something that I do, but I did. Like, I was in shock because he was a young lad. And he was a happy lad. And obviously I'd asked, what do you mean we've lost him? And he said he took his own life. And I just, on top of everything else, that came, and it broke me, really. And he was supposed to be coming to the fight, which obviously he couldn't anymore. His funeral was arranged. My ex came to the funeral with me. She was playing the person who cares and wants to be there for me. But then there was, around the funeral and before, there was times when I'd be on the phone to his mum or his sister or people because they'd ring me, because everyone said I was his mate, but he looked at me like a big brother because I was older. So they just wanted to talk to me, and I wanted to be there for them because they've just lost their son or brother. And I remember she used to get annoyed that I sit on the phone to them talking to them. She used to get really angry and say, "I'm struggling mentally, and all you care about is your friend who's not here anymore. You're not seeing who's here and who needs you here." And I was just like, how selfish. Like, these people have lost someone. Like, I've lost one of my best friends, and you're making it about you. After everything that's happened, you're making this about you. And we one thing that I think I'll always struggle to forgive is that I found out when I lost him, and through those days where she was telling me I was selfish and stuff, she was still seeing this person whilst I was struggling with that. And then I was being told I was selfish. But we stayed together, I suppose. She was there with her family for the boxing bout. I asked permission to wear a jersey with my friend's face on, and involved him in that to make it felt like he was there a little bit with me. And we were together, but it wasn't the same anymore. But I was kind of like, I've got to make it work. We've got the kids, I've got to find a way. Now, money was a big stress, a really big stress for us. And by this point, with the operation and all the other little bits and pieces, we'd built up a lot of debt. And, well, I'd say there was 40 grand in different debts, plus the house that we owned didn't really have any equity in it, and it was different things. So we talked about what do we do, and we were kind of trying to think of ways what do we need to change, and what can we do to try and change how this is going. And we were talking about whether we moved or what we would do. And we had there was one night where she went out with a friend, same friend from this other time, but they came back together. From this again, I was told this lad turned up, so they came home. So I was like, okay, come on. Not much you can do if he turns up. You can't stop him turning up if he's in the town centre and he sees you. He's going to follow you. So they came home. She was drunk, so I put her in bed, sorted a friend out with a cover and stuff to go sleep on the sofa, got in bed myself. Got up in the morning to go to work, gone downstairs, and I'm like, something feels weird down here. So I'm looking around. And I went into the kitchen, and there's a guy's blazer there, like over my chair on the dining table. I'm like, what's that? So I've woke a friend up and I've gone, have you had something in the house? She's gone, what you on about? I was like, there's a jacket here. So she's got up, obviously still half asleep, and she's like coming over and she's like, that's his jacket. And I'm not going to say his name, but that's his jacket. I was like, what? She went, that's his jacket. He had that on last night. I was like, how's it got in here? She went, actually, honestly, I don't know. So I've woke her up. Like, she's like, what? I'm telling her. She's like, what do you mean? And I'm like, what is going on here? And then something twigged in my head that middle of the night, the dog was barking. We had a dog. I remember going downstairs, it was barking at something outside. And I opened the door, went in the garden, couldn't see anything, shut the door. But I didn't lock it. Just forgot to lock it. Because then I remembered coming down in the morning and it was open. I'm like, I've not locked the door. So then I'm starting to look round at things. I'm like, what is this, what's going on? And I'm like, is anyone coming in the house? They're both like, I knew she'd not got up. She was in bed. I put her in bed. So I knew she'd not got up. So then I'm thinking, is a friend lying to me? And she's like, I promise you, I've not let no one in this house. She said he was messaging me last night saying he was going to come round. And I just told him, don't be stupid, like everyone's in bed. He's going to cause trouble. She said, I've been asleep all night. So I started looking around the house. And then her handbag was on the side. And there was like a piece of paper in the handbag. And someone had written on it initials, his initials and her initials with like a love heart. And I was like, what's that? So she's like, that wasn't in there last night. I said, I know it wasn't because I took your phone and stuff out your bag. It wasn't there. So she's like, hang on a minute. And on the side, it was hers and a friend's passports. When it went out, her passport was gone off the side. So I'm like, he's been in this house, hasn't he? She's like, he wouldn't. I was like, what other explanation is there? And I looked on the fridge and there was like a bill or something on the fridge on a magnet. And the corner had been ripped off. So this note in the bag was just ripped off that fridge. And I'm like, what? Why? Now, when I say his jacket was on there, his jacket was on this chair and her jacket was on the chair next to it. Okay. But I know I hung her jacket up. So he's obviously in some weird warped way for its normal behaviour to come into my house in the middle of the night when we're all asleep and try and set something up to look like she's had him in the house. That's the only logic I can get.
Did you manage to, did you report that?
I phoned the police and explained it all. They said he hasn't broken in because the door wasn't locked, so we can't prosecute him for breaking an entry because he hasn't broken entry. He's entered an unlocked door. So I'm like, well, what can you do? He said, all we can do is give him words of warning, basically. So the police ran me back after visited him and he took the coat. It was his coat. He didn't admit to them that he'd done anything, but they just said to him, look, this is the scenario. And then eventually she got in touch with him through his mum, I think, and eventually she got the passport back, so we knew it was him. And I just said, like, I can't be around, like, I can't have him come around the house, we've got kids. So we I say we decided, but I'll be honest with you, there was an element of me that did it for personal reasons as well. We decided to file for bankruptcy. And there was two things. Number one, I was drowning in the debt because I was the only person trying to pay it off. But secondly as well, in the back of my mind, I knew I probably couldn't forgive this now. But I also knew I couldn't leave because the children were too young. So selfishly, I was kind of like, I think maybe she'd say it was selfish that I didn't say, right, I can never forgive you. But I was doing it for the kids. I couldn't leave the kids and risk that she might get back with this guy and he'd be around the kids. So I said I could forgive her, but we need a fresh start. So we need to get rid of the debt because it's putting a stress on our relationship. We're never going to get into being able to have a life that we want, which meant we'd have to give up the house because you can't go bankrupt, obviously, if you've got a house. So before we filed for the bankruptcy, we looked for a place to rent, got all that agreed, moved in there, and literally straight away filed for bankruptcy, handed the house back to the bank, handed cars back. I had a company car, so I didn't need them. And yeah, we went through that process. And for a little bit, it kind of was, I felt it was a bit of a fresh start. We'd moved somewhere new. This guy didn't know where we lived. No problems. And then she was out one night and she rang me. She said, I'm in a taxi coming home. He's been out in town and he was following me. He was following me in the taxi queue. I've got into a taxi, but he's got in the taxi behind me and he's following me. And I was like, what? The taxi, he's going to get in a taxi and that taxi driver he's going to say, follow that taxi, and they're going to do that. It's a bit. So I was kind of like, right, so she's going to turn up here and there's going to be another taxi right behind her. But there wasn't. She got home, came in, and a good 5 minutes later, this other taxi turned up. Now I'm in the house with the kids. I'm like, if I go outside now, I'm gonna get myself in trouble because I'm gonna like explode. So I rang the police, and I could hear banging on the door and stuff, and he was shouting, and I was like, I can't. I'm could feel myself getting angry, and I'm like, I'm not aggressive, but I feel like I could have got myself in real trouble that night. So eventually the police turn up and I hear him speaking to me, knock on the door. And then we're sat on the sofa and there's a phone in a bag. I was like, who's that phone? She's like, that's his phone. I was like, why is that phone in your bag? She's like, he's obviously put it in my bag at the taxi rank so that he's got a reason to have to follow me. And I'm like, what? So I took the phone anyway outside, told the police that's his phone, give it him. And I said something to him like, you're pathetic. Like, this is my family, like, find your own family. And I remember him shouting something and he smashed his own phone, which I didn't know what that benefited. Because it didn't benefit, it wasn't punishing me, but he smashed his own phone anyway. He got took away, and I think she was adamant that she'd not been near him. She don't know how he's followed her home.
So did all this manage to come to a head at some point, or did
we'd moved to a new house here, and obviously, so there was a few other things that happened. There was one morning I got up, went outside, and like on my car, someone had wrote in the dirt like slag, liar, all these things on, and I was like, and there's a few cans of beer sat on the grass. So I'm like, well, that's weird, you know. So obviously he's been sat outside drinking, outside the house again. So eventually it came out that he actually lived across the road above the shops. So we'd moved closer to where he lived.
That's unfortunate.
So it was a few other things, but I think I've made my point that he came around, he did a few other things that was really odd, you know, things that sort of broke things in the garden, but only a little bit, so that when I queried it, I'd look crazy. Like, why would I do that? I'm like, well, clearly you have. So we had times where there was family that had seen little things when we'd been out together, and he'd turned up there and I didn't notice, and family had seen him and she'd got rid of him, but they'd not told me. Her family, they'd kind of spoke to him and said, you need to sort this out, like, otherwise, but they didn't tell me. So eventually we got to the point where I just couldn't forgive that. And I would say we'd been in that house for over a year. My little girl was speaking. She was talking. And I was like, I'm never going to feel the same about you. I'm never going to be able to forgive what you've done. I don't want to be in this relationship anymore. And we initially, I think maybe she was at the same point, but I think she didn't want to be the one to say it because of everything that had happened. So initially it was amicable in terms of, she said, well, I don't want to give the house up because just moved. This is the kids' home. I don't want them to have nothing. I said, well, if you want to stay here, you can stay here. She said, well, I can't afford to stay here. That's what she said to me. So I was like, well, I can. But I can't afford to pay for you to stay here because then I can't find somewhere for me to go. So she said, well, I need to sort somewhere for me to stay, but I'll stay with my mum in the meantime. But can I come back here when I stay with the kids? So I was like, how does that work? So I spoke to a friend and also her mum, and we had an arrangement where for a while I would stay at home with the kids for my nights, and then when she came, I would go and stay at friends or stay at her mum's, weirdly. And I say at this point, I think her family understood my decision. Her mum let me go and stay at her house, and we got on well. So she definitely understood my decision. And her dad actually said to me, "I'm surprised it took you this long. I could never forgive what you forgive." And I stayed close to her dad. I was always close to him, but after we separated, I stayed really close to him. He'd come round for a brew, and there was times when we'd argue, and I'd speak to him, and he'd speak to her, and he'd go, "I'll sort it out. I'll have a word with her," and that stayed. The relationship with her mum was good for a while, even to the point where I had a tattoo covered up. I had a name, and I covered it up quite early, actually, after we broke up, within like a week, because I knew I was done. It had been done a long time. So, and I remember her mum kind of laughing about it. She's going to be really angry about that. I'm like, well. So, what I'm saying is they weren't against me.
Yeah.
They were like, I understand, but we've just got to make sure things are right for the kids. Let's sort it out. And we had loads of conversations about sorting it out, and we were doing this for a while. We were in the same house, but then obviously I was kind of like, I want to start dating.
How long ago, or how long after you'd separated was this then?
Well, we did the sharing the house for a couple of months, and then I kind of started to try and speak to people because.
So you were totally over it.
I was over it before. I knew for a good. I mean, I knew a long time ago that I couldn't ever probably forgive her, but I was.
All the transgressions I'd built up, I guess.
This was the trigger, actually. I knew early in that year that we were done, but we had a holiday booked to Disney with the kids, and I was like, I can't. That's a family holiday they've been looking forward to. That's like, and I had it in my head that will be the last one. But I wanted it to feel like a family holiday for me. I wanted it to be real, and we went on that holiday, and we got on to an extent. But I think maybe because we were on the way home, but when we were on the way back, we were tired. We were driving back, but we'd had a few little bickers on the way back, and then she's like, "Can I drive?" Like, because I just feel comfortable with a drive. I said, "You can do, but like slow. We're driving in another country. Drive slow." Like, so we're driving, and she just kept speeding up, and I'm like, "I've asked you to slow down. Please stop going." She's like doing like 90 in a foreign country. I'm like, "Wait, like slow down. Like, we're all tired. We've got the kids in the car. We're in another country. It only takes them 1 second to." So a couple of times I said so, and eventually I just lost my temper and I said, "Stop! Like, I'm driving. Stop! Pull over." So we stopped at a service station. We had a bit of an argument, and we got back from that. And I'd say it was within a couple of weeks of getting back that I had the conversation. But I'd kind of knew for a while that it was done. So yeah, I was ready to move on. I wanted to meet someone who wasn't going to treat me that way, and and that's what I was adamant I was going to do. So I started trying to date, and basically the people were like, "It's weird, your setup. So you just share a house." And I was like, I'm not going to meet someone in this setup because it is weird.
Yeah, we did it for a while.
So I said I spoke to her and I said, I can't keep doing this. Because I said, and also the kids, I'll be honest with you, the other thing as well, the kids kept saying to me, when I was at home with them, they were saying to me, when's mum coming home? And same when she was there, and I was like, it's the kids, they're not understanding, and I don't think it's good for them. I think they need to understand we're not together and we live separate. So she'd been trying to get somewhere, but she was struggling to get somewhere, because technically she wasn't homeless. So I spoke to my landlord and I said, can you take her off the tenancy? Can I sign a new tenancy, take her off? Then she's not got anywhere to go. So he agreed to do that. Did that. So she could then put herself down as being homeless, so she could get somewhere quicker. And in the meantime, my mum said, you can stay with me. Mum had a 3-bedroom house on her own. Mum and dad had separated by this point. So wasn't much smaller than my house. And she was there for a bit, but then her and her mum started falling out because on top of each other. So then I had a mum messaging me saying, you need to let her come back in the house. And I'm like, not a chance. Like, this is what we've agreed. Like, and she's like, well, she can't be here. I can't, it's too small. I'm like, so, like, it's the same many rooms as what I've got. Like, I don't understand what you mean. Like, and I have them here half the week anyway. So then that was when I was the bad one. I'd kicked her out of the family home. She had nowhere to go. I'd left her homeless. I was giving her no money. She was having to go to food banks. And I'm like, look, I'm having to try and work out how I pay these bills on my own now. I can't afford.
How often were you getting to see the kids?
I was still having them the same. So I was having them... so quite quickly when we... Initially... Sorry, that wasn't the same, because initially I'd not got any agreement with work. So initially when we broke up, I had them Friday, Saturday. And then they went back Sunday. But then at some point, eventually, she got a house. But I was made out. It was made out like I'd forced her to go to food banks, and don't get me wrong, she probably didn't have much money, but mum and dad had money. Do you know what I mean? They weren't short, and it was like I was struggling to find the rent, so I didn't lose the house. So I didn't have nothing. I was giving her £100 a month to pay towards food, and I was having the kids 3 nights a week. So I was like, I haven't got any more than that at the minute until I get stuff sorted. Plus on that first month when she moved out, she said she would still pay half the rent because we were sharing a house, but she didn't. So I got stuck with that as well. So I had to find an extra bit of money. So eventually she got the house, and that was when it became really difficult, because what I'd gone from was, if I was at home, I had the kids. If the kids weren't there, I was at other people's houses. So I was either at mum's, but when I stayed at mum's, I would go work and I would maybe go and see friends or go gym, and then I would go there to sleep. So I was out all the time because I couldn't go home.
Yeah.
But then when she got a house and I was just at home, that house was big. There's no one else there but me.
I get that.
And that's when it's very quiet.
I got the feeling with this place.
Yeah.
And the kids are, it's okay, but when you're on your own, I just stay in this room.
Yeah, I really started to struggle then. And it wasn't that I wanted to be back with her, but I was just like, what do I do now?
It's just the transition.
Yeah, what is my life now? Will someone want to be with someone who's got 3 kids to somebody else who's not got much spare money because he's got to run a house on his own? It's not, it wasn't a cheap house. So, it still is expensive.
Yeah.
So, sorry, I found it really difficult. So I'll be honest with you, I just tried to go gym. I spent a lot of time on dating apps, but I'll be honest, I wasn't really interested. I was just bored.
You realise as well, dating costs money.
Yeah. So I'd sit on these apps and I'd just chat, but I'd just almost like be taking the mick a little bit. I wouldn't really be serious. And I went on a few dates and met a few people, and I dated someone for a brief while that the ex found out about, and then she just caused lots of problems, started putting posts on Facebook, trying to get in touch with this person. And at this point, one of the things I forgot to mention, which is quite important, which is really important actually, is when I said I was getting to the point where I was done and I finally made a decision, I got that feeling that something wasn't right again. But she was adamant nothing was going on with anyone. I was like, I'm always going to get this feeling. So this is, I know I can't. And that's where I said, like, I'm done. And when she went to live at her mum's, within a couple of weeks, I went to the school because I was, the kids had left some trainers at mine. So I thought I'll go and give them her in the morning at the school and I can go straight to work. I've not got to do it after work because I wanted to go gym with my friend. So I got in school and she's not there yet. So I thought I'll wait for her to come through. And she comes through the school gates and looking, I'm like, what's that? So there's some bloke walking through the school gates holding my kid's hands. Now we're a couple of weeks after breaking up, officially. And I don't know anything about any guy. And then I recognised him. And I was like, he used to coach at a rugby team that I coached at. He was only a young lad. And I walked over. I went, what are you doing? And he just like, I'm just helping her out. I went, let go of my kid's hands and leave. And he did. And she was like, don't cause a scene, don't cause a scene. I went, I'm not causing a scene. I gave the kids a kiss. I said, take the kids into the school gates. I'll speak to you in a minute. I waited outside for her. And he was out there. And I went, what's this? She went, we're just friends. I went, you've just had some man who I wasn't aware was around my children walk my children to school. What? Who does that? Like, there's going to be people in this school playground who know us, who are going to be wondering who that is. And I don't even know. I knew who he was, but I don't know him.
Yeah.
And he was like, she said, we've just been chatting, we met for a coffee, and I was speaking to her this morning, said she was struggling, I said I'd come and help her. I was like, come and help her what? Get my children to school? You don't even know my children. Like, what do you mean? And
that is weird.
I just said to him, look, no disrespect, I've got no problem with you because you don't owe me anything. So we'll leave that there. I said, but you, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing? Because if I did that, you would lose your mind. I said, I'm going to leave because I can feel myself getting angry. I said, but I'll never forgive what you've just done, because that really knocked me out. To see someone you didn't even know was around holding your children's hands to school when you're just getting used to the fact you don't do that every day. And a couple of things twigged. So a few months before we broke up, she mentioned that one of her friends whose son played for this guy's rugby team really fancied him, and she bumped into him on a night out, and she was trying to get him to go on a date with a friend. And I remember her telling me about that story, and then I'm thinking, that's when this started. I know, I've got it in my head, I've got the story, I've got the conversation, I know how it works. Oh, my friend really fancies you. Well, what about if I fancy a friend? And you can imagine the conversation because I know how it goes, you know. So I'm like, that makes sense. So I spoke to him, I think, on messages, and I said, like, what's been going on? And a couple of things started to come out then. There's one weekend when I took the kids up to my mum's. She lived down south, sorry, she lived down Devon way at the time. And I took them down there for the weekend, and she didn't want to come. I was like, okay, don't come then. And that was, on that weekend, they'd had a party at mum's because mum was away, and he happened to be at that party, and I'm like, okay, this is all clicking in now. So the only thing they've ever admitted is that they kissed before we broke up officially, but I believe there was more going on, and you know, no one needs to admit that to me. It doesn't really matter, you know, anymore. But I got the feeling that something was going on. So then this guy is around the kids quite quickly. And then I find out I picked the kids up one day to come back to mine, and I'm in the car, and one of the little ones is saying to me, "Oh, such and such was at ours last night. He stayed over," and I went, "What?" And then my other kid, the eldest, went, "Shh," and that flicked something because I'm like, "Don't tell them to shush. What were you saying?" And they repeated it. I went, "Why are you telling them to lie to me? What have you been told?" And he's like, "Oh, Mum just said you'd get angry if someone else was around." And I was like, "You're telling the kids to lie to me now. You're teaching my children that they need to lie to me. It's not okay." So I turned the car around, and it's the only time I've ever really lost my temper in front of the children. But I turned my car around. I drove all the way back to my mum's. I went in there, and I went in there and I was angry. I was like, "How dare you have someone staying over in a house with my children and you've not even told me? I don't even know he's around." And then you tell them to not tell me. So I think her mum called her dad. He came round and was like, "Calm it down, blah, blah, blah." We had a conversation. He said, "I didn't even know anything about it," because he wasn't living there. He said, "I didn't know she had anyone around here." And I was like, and he was still sticking with the story, "We're just friends." And I'm like, "Come on, I'm not stupid." So that went on for a bit. She obviously got this house. And quite quickly, he was there. He basically was Mum's new boyfriend now. And I'm like, at this point, I wasn't angry. I was just like, right, okay. And actually, he was a nice lad. So in my head, I was just like, thank God it's not someone like that other guy.
That is good.
So I was like, you know what? It's fine. Initially, it was kind of it was just
a bit quick.
It's odd, isn't it? It's odd, even though it should be fine. It's odd. So I wanted to meet someone else anyway. So the reason why I felt that was so important is I then started trying to date, but she kept getting involved, messaging people, and then she would ring me, and I'd get phone calls at the weekend when she was drunk saying, "Can I come round?" And I'm like, "No, you're with someone else now. Why are you ringing me? The kids are here. You're not coming around the house. Just let me come. Oh, I just want to spend some time with you." I'm like, "Absolutely not." And I'm not going to go into the specifics of what was said because it's not needed. But she wanted to come round on numerous occasions, and I was like, "No, I'm not interested. Like, I'm done. I've told you, I'm done." Like, and in the background, I could hear him. He was on the phone. It's like, "No one," and I'm like, What are you doing? Like, you've got someone there who's a decent guy who you can move on with. You've done what you've done.
She's doing too much to you.
Well, she wanted to, but obviously, I wasn't interested.
So how was the arrangement with the kids? Was that ever affected, or did it move quite smoothly?
Effectively, it became quite clear, if I'm being honest, that she wasn't going to let me have 50-50 because she wanted to be the main carer. And I don't think at that point it was down to money because I'd agreed to pay her a certain amount, which wasn't a lot, but I had them 3 nights a week and I was giving her £100 a month, and I was also still paying her phone bill because it was in my name, which was like £70 a month. So I was giving them not far off £200 a month plus buying the kids things, clothes, shoes, anything they needed. So, I was giving what I felt was a fair share, considering I was also running a house on my own and getting used to that. And as I say, I tried to move on, meet a couple of people. She kind of got involved, caused problems, and I was just always like, "What? I don't understand why. Why can't I do what you've done? You've already done it." So I went on dating apps, wasn't really taking anything seriously, and then got a message from someone who's now my partner, and this was April, so we separated, I think, August, September, maybe a little bit earlier, kind of cloudy a little bit, but I think it was March, April, maybe, where I started to speak to this girl, but initially she wasn't very available, so we'd message a lot, but then she'd kind of not be free. to go meet up. So we met up on a couple of dates, but it was sometimes weeks between dates. So I initially, in the first couple of weeks before we went on a date, I was still speaking to her people, but I liked her, but she just wasn't free. So when we went out on the first date, and it just went great. Like, we just spoke, and we spoke for a first date. We spoke on a deep level. Like, we told each other a lot, and you know, you just feel like you can see someone's genuine. Like, you can see it in their eyes. Like, they're really listening. They're not just listening to it surface. They're listening to what you've got to say, and they care. And after that first date, I wasn't interested in anybody else. I just stopped speaking to anybody else on the apps. And we started speaking, going on a few dates. Started to get quite serious. We liked each other. And I think at some point I obviously told my ex that I'd met someone, you know, I liked. She's not met the kids yet, but, you know, she might do. And she's like, you know, I'll make sure before anyone comes around my kids, I meet them first. And I was like, it's a bit arrogant, given what you did.
Yeah, I wouldn't afford that.
But at the time I was like, okay. I didn't say okay, but I thought, well, there's no reason not to. So that was my intention, is somehow some introduction, whatever it be. It might have been a phone call, I don't know, but it would have been something. But then the girl I was dating, who I'm now with, her name's Jordan, I can say her name. She got some messages on social media from the kid's mum, and they weren't nice. They were very passive aggressive. I believe you're dating Ashley. Just so you know, he's got kids and they're his priority. So if you want to be with someone who's your priority, I suggest you find someone else. And if you ever want to have children with him, we've already agreed that we're never going to have more children. So you might as well forget about that one. And it was just this, and I was like, that's how dare you send that message?
Yeah.
And there was quite a big lie in there, a really big lie, which was, oh, and just so you know, if you are thinking of having children at some point in your life, I'd had a vasectomy as well, which I made the decision after the third child, because I was like, we've got 3, we're getting married, I don't plan on having anymore.
Yeah.
Wasn't expecting within 6 months for our relationship to be falling apart. But so when I met this person, she asked me if I wanted children. And I told her, I was honest, I said, I've about the vasectomy, I said, but if I met someone who was the right person, I would consider having it reversed. So that was a big thing for her, because she really wanted children. And she said, but like, I know, if you don't want children, I'd rather you just told me. And I said, no, I said, it's not that I don't want them. I didn't think I was going to have more with the person I was with. But if I felt it was the right thing, I would consider it, because I enjoy being a dad. So she was like, okay. I'll be honest with you, she struggled with it a little bit at first, because she's like, well, what if it doesn't work? And I was like, well, I don't know. We'll work on it. So then she got this message to say, just so you know, Ashley had a vasectomy when we were together, and there was major complications, which means it can never be reversed. And that wasn't true.
Okay.
So obviously I then get a distraught Jordan on the phone to say, what's going on? Is this true? And I'm like, absolutely not. And obviously she had to just believe that, because there's nothing I can show her to show that isn't true, but she had to believe me. So that's how that started. And I was like, you know what, you've lost any bit of validation for you to try and tell me you need to meet this woman now, because after sending her that message, she don't want to meet you. You know, she doesn't want to, and I'm not going to force her to. So we arranged for her to meet the kids. This was a good few months in. And I'd say 4 months after we met. We met up at a park. She bought a dog that she lived with a friend. I took the kids to the park, and it was quite casual, you know. We went for a walk, we took the kids to the park. I said that, you know, someone that Dad's dating that might, you know, be Dad's girlfriend in the future. I just wanted you to meet her. And the kids were excited, to be honest. They were excited. You know, well, Mum's got a boyfriend, so why can't you have a girlfriend? You know, fine. So then they went back to the mums at the end of that week and obviously told her. And that's when the abuse started. You know, you're a
Abuse
disgrace.
to who? You?
Yeah, you're a disgrace. It's disgusting how you would take my children to meet a woman that I've never even met. You better not have her around my kids again, blah, blah, blah. And I just
Bit
replied.
of a liberty.
Yeah, I just replied saying, it's none of your business. Like, how can you message me when I said, if you wouldn't have messaged those messages, you would have had the courtesy of being introduced. So you lost that now. And it just carried on from there. I would go around to drop something off. She'd be in the car and it'd be, how dare you bring that slag around my house, this, that. And I'm like, what? She's done nothing to you. She's just met me. She's done nothing to you. So we had times where it started to then become a problem because she would send the kids with messages.
With messages?
Well, messages like, what I mean by instructions. You don't have to listen to her. She's not your mum. So she moved in the September of that year. So we'd been, and there was multiple reasons. Her friend and her had a bit of a falling out, and you know, and kind of, I wanted her to move in as well, you know. So I was like, you can move in here. Like, the kids love you. Like, I don't see why not. Again, bear in mind, this other guy's moved into a house with her within a couple of weeks. So I'm 6 months down the line, and I believed that this person, it wasn't just someone I was dating. I believed this was the person I wanted to be with. So she moved in, and that was when, like, you know, she's not your mum. You don't have to listen to her. She'll never be your mum. And these kind of messages again got sent to her. You'll never be the mum. Don't try and be the mum. Don't try and tell my kids what they should do. So my little girl, one of the days that it really got to me was my little girl, and she was only 4, maybe at the time. So she was getting a hair brushed by my partner, and she said, she just turned around and said to her, Jordan, why does my mummy say you're not a nice person? And I just looked up and I just seen tears roll down her eyes, and she just walked off. She's like, I need to. And my little girl was like, what? Because she didn't know what she said wrong. She's asking a question. And I was just like, I was so angry. I was like, why are you saying these things to the children? So I rang her up, and, you know, first time I'd really rang and for a long time and got angry. And I was like, how dare you? What are you doing? Like, you're messing with the kids' heads. Like, just, they deserve to like the person I'm with. Like, why do you want them to dislike, or what you? And she didn't care. She's just defensive and blaming everyone else. The kids don't like her. I'm like, well, I don't see that. I don't see the kids don't like her. And she tried to, and I would say it still happens now. Stop the kids from liking her. She didn't want them to. She never did. And that's because we, you know, and as she lived with me for longer, and we stayed together for longer, she would have more of a role of helping with the kids. Not a mum role, but a parental role, you know, a guardian role. So she would help with stuff. She would do stuff with them. She would help my little girl wash her hair. She would help put them to bed. All the normal things that you do. She'd be helping me. And I would get told that she can't tell them off if they do something wrong. And I'm like, well, that's not your decision. It's my house. I decide on that. And I would get told, well, I don't let my partner do it, because it should only be the mum and dad that do it. I'm like, well, that's your choice. That's your parenting in your house. This is my parenting in my house. I make the decisions. You know, she doesn't punish them, but she can tell me they've done wrong, and then I'll decide what the punishment is. That's fine. Yeah. So there was a lot of that.
So how long's it been since?
So we've been together for, I think it's over 6 years now, and it's.
How is the setup now?
So we started off going through that. I think I'll explain how we got to the setup, and that will kind of go from there. So we went through a period where it was amicable, reasonable, and my partner moved in, and things stopped being amicable. It was a case of I'd always had them on certain nights, and then I would have them the odd extra night sometimes, take them out, have one on their own, or do something, and that started to become I'd be dictated to instead of it being discussed. You know,
Yeah.
you can't have them that day, you can have them this day. Well, I'm busy that day. And it was because she knew that I'd made plans with my partner. So she didn't want me to be able to do those. She wanted to interrupt them and make me have to change all the time for her. So she was in control. And it just continued and continued. And then we got to the Christmas. And we'd always, since we'd separated, sorry, no, it wasn't the first Christmas, it was the second Christmas. The first Christmas was okay. And then we had a long year of just battles, you know, constantly sending the children with messages. My eldest was the one that was really, he was manipulated the most. He was the one that was, because he was older, so he was pushing boundaries a bit more. He was the one that was more difficult because his mum was saying to him, you don't have to listen to her. So I was in the middle of him being disrespectful, trying to manage that without him hating being at my house.
Did you ever raise it as a concern because it's effectively he's trying to alienate a step parent? It's manipulating a child.
It's the thing is, within that first year of her moving in, there was so much happening. So I was getting phone calls from social services to say, we've had a phone call just reporting some concerns regarding the children. I'd say, well, what concerns? Well, mum's called us to say that your partner uses hair straighteners on your little girl's hair. And I'm like, she has done a couple of times. What's the problem? She's not burnt her with them. No, mum's just said she's concerned that she could get burnt. I'm like,
could.
So I said to the social worker, I said, can I ask you a question? I said, am I allowed to decide if my daughter has a hair straightened? She said, yeah, of course you are. I said, well, why are you ringing me? She said, we just have to follow up. I said, so have you got a concern? She said, no. I said, okay, that's the end of that phone call. And I got another one to say that, so this was the start of COVID, so we did a lot of walking. And I got a phone call to say that the kid's mum had reported that my partner had kicked my eldest son. And I was like, no, she hasn't. So the story was that we were out for a walk and she'd booted him really hard and he'd fell on the floor. And I'm like, instantly I'm like, I know what you're talking about. I know exactly what happened. And it was, we were having a little walk. My eldest, out of nowhere, just swiped his little brother's legs, just cleaned him out, really hurt him. So my other half tapped him and went, don't ever do that again. And he went, that really hurt. And I went, behave yourself. Just barely touched you. So he's gone back to his mum's, exaggerated because he's angry about it. And then she's exaggerated it more. And then I've got social services ringing me saying she kicked him. I said, well, she didn't. I wouldn't allow anyone to hit my children. That's not happened. And he said, well, he asked a few questions and that was it. There was didn't go any further. But those kind of calls become a regular thing. And it got to the point where everything was difficult. I'd get a message saying, I want to get the kid's hair cut. I'm in the barber's. You need to send me some money now. I'm like, I've not got any money. I've already sent you money for the month. You're disgusting. You're spending your money taking out your new chick on dates. And I'm like, it's none of your concern what I'm doing. I've give you money for the kids. If you want the haircut, they'll have to wait till next week when I get paid and I'll take them. If you've took them without telling me, I've not agreed that I can afford to pay for it. And those kind of messages were consistent. Then she'd start to demand things from the house that she never wanted before. I want the dryer. Well, what am I supposed to use then? The kids' clothes need drying. I've had the dryer for a year without you being here. Well, it was our dryer. I want it. And I'm like, well, you're not having it. And it was just those kind of calls. And it just went and went. And then we had an instance where we got towards Christmas and we'd always, the last 2 years before, we'd swap the children over at 12 on Christmas Day. So someone gets Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, year after we alternate. And we agreed we were going to do that.
Yeah.
And then it got to, she'd kicked off at me about something to do with my partner, I think. And I just was like, I'm not interested. Then I got a message, oh, by the way, you can get the kids at 2 on Christmas Day. And I'm like, no, we always get them at 12. That's what we always do. And it was basically, no, I've made plans now. And I'm like, well, you can't just do that. Like that's what we do. We've made arrangements. We're going for food. Like, And we argued back and forward. I just blocked her. I'm like, I'm picking up at 12. I'll see you at 12. Blocked her. And then she messaged my partner saying, tell your scumbag of a boyfriend this, that. And I was just like, I can't do this anymore. I can't be dictated to. I need a plan. So
Yeah.
I waited till after Christmas. When they reopened, I applied for mediation. I attended mediation, explained everything. I said a big part of the issue is the way that my ex feels about my current partner. I said, I've got no issue with her partner. I said, so I think if we can do mediation where we talk and then potentially bring the other parties in and we try and build a relationship there. Mediator said, yeah, great idea. You know, that's perfect. I paid the fee for mediation. Mum went to mediation and the mediator just basically told me she said no to everything. She wasn't interested. She wasn't going to agree to anything. She didn't want to sit in a room with my partner. And that's that. She's not going to come to any agreement. So obviously as part of this mediation, I said, I want to put a specific parenting plan in place of what days I have them and when they are. I wasn't asking for more at this time. I just wanted it set. No, she's not interested. So I said, well, if you're not going to put it in stone, like when I get them, I'm going to have to go to court as I want it in writing. I don't want to be told when I can have them and when I can't. It's not fair. She said, you take me to court and I'll take you for everything you've got. And I'm like, right, well, I'm going to take that risk because I can't keep living like this. So I'd not even put the application into court. And before I even put the application in, child maintenance let her straight through the door. And initially she told the child maintenance I didn't have the kids. So that I got like I'm sure it was something like crazy, like £800 a month they wanted me to pay. And I rang them up and I said, like, I have the kids. I had to provide messages to prove when I had them, which I did. And then they adjusted it, but the child maintenance was still a significant figure. I think it was like $385 I paid for them, and I had them 3 nights a week as well. So it was quite a lot. But again, we kind of just made do. My current partner was like, you know, we'll work it out. We'll, you know, obviously I've got an income, and she started to help more with the household bills and stuff like that because obviously I was paying that out, and we made that work. And I was like, right, well, if that's the way that it's going, I'd always never pushed for joint custody because it was amicable, but it's not anymore. You know, there's no, and also, you know, alongside me paying that child maintenance is supposed to pay for clothes and all these kind of things. They were coming with nothing. They were being sent to me with just the clothes on the back. I wasn't getting sent school uniform, so I had to go and buy that. And I'm like, what's the maintenance for? She said, well, it's to provide stuff for them. And I said, yeah, but when do you provide stuff for them? Because you're buying the uniform out of that, and I've now got none. You know, like, we're supposed to be, you provide half for them, and that's my half for them. So I decided I was going to apply to court, and I wanted to go down the route of joint custody because I was like, I'm as much of a positive impact in the kids' lives as the mum. It wasn't about the money. The money is, I would have paid for that money, and I'd pay any money for my children if it's used for them and it's fair. But it wasn't getting used for them. They were coming to me with nothing, and I was having to buy stuff for them. They were walking around in shoes that were old, and I was being told, you buy them some. And I'm like, I can't buy them and give you the money. I can't do both. So I put the application into court. Immediately, obviously, I was the worst person in the world. And that's when some of her family members, her mum and her dad, kind of backed off. Her dad said to me that he thought it was wrong for me to be trying to get the children half the time. And I said, but why? And he said, because kids should be with the mum. And I was like, that's where we're different, because her mum and dad always had a traditional...
Yeah, I get it.
You know, he worked, she was the mum. That's fine, but that's not how I am. I was always a really involved parent. I did everything with the kids. I was there all the time. I didn't go out the weekends. I was dad. I was always there. So I'm like, you're now saying that you want the children more than me, but I always had them more than you when we were together. So why are they better off now with you more? Yeah. I just want the same. I'm not asking for more. I don't want the children from you. I don't want to start being a mum. I just want to have the same time with them that you do. So initially I went through the process. I applied to court. I was asking to have an additional day fortnightly, which would have made it 50-50, 4 days 1 week, 3 the other. And I put the application in, but I got in touch with Fathers for Justice, and just to get a bit of advice really on whether what I was doing was right, if there's anything that I needed. And consultation fee was, I think I said it was £50. It might have been £100. It certainly wasn't a lot. And I had I think it was a good 30-minute to an hour phone call with the guy who actually started it, who runs it. And he was really helpful. And he said to me, you're doing great with what you're doing. Your application's great. What you've told me so far, you're doing the right thing. I just think that, you can do it yourself. We don't need to help you. And he said the only thing I would change is that the setup for what you're going for. He said whenever we have applicants that go for joint custody, they nearly only ever get it if they're asking for week on, week off, especially dads, he said, because that's the routine that has the least amount of confusion and conflict for the children. So he said you need to make sure that everything that you put in all of your statements is for the benefit of the children. How is it benefiting the children? It's not about you. The court don't care about you. It's not about money. The court is not interested in what you pay. All they care about is what is going to be better for the children with what you're asking for. And that's what I did. I put together statements saying that I wanted to go for week on, week off. I put in there that it stops conflicts because we don't need to communicate. It's just one handover every week on a Sunday. We don't have to swap school uniforms. We don't have to buy clothes for each other. We don't have to have one person taking all the school time, one person getting all the fun time. Everyone gets everything equal. The kids get enough time with both parents to do hobbies and school, so that the kids are getting the best of both parents. And it was more detailed than that, but effectively everything I put in those statements, and every time I had a court hearing, it was all about what is best for the children and why I think it's best for the children. I never once talked about what I wanted, because the judge doesn't care. If I make it about me, he's not interested. And unfortunately for the children's mum, she made it all about her. Everything was about how she feels, how she's going to be affected, why it's not fair, what I don't do and how I've been. And she then decided to try and take it when I think it was clear that maybe it wasn't going to go the way she wanted. She then tried to, on the back of her solicitor's advice, she did two things actually. The first thing the solicitor tried was he tried to tell me that I had to pay spousal maintenance. So I don't know if you've ever heard of that, but it does exist.
The third rule of thirds.
So he told me that I need to be paying money to her on top of the child maintenance to make sure that she's able to live a life at the same level as me.
Well, that's part of your divorce settlement.
Well, yeah, and we weren't divorced at this point. So I went back to him, and I'll be honest with you, for a solicitor, and I know he got paid well, he wasn't great, he wasn't the brightest. And he said a lot of things in his stuff that his letter sent me where he made himself look a bit daft. He put things wrong, and I went back and I made him change them. Just to confirm on this letter, you've got this wrong. And he'd then send an email to his PA to say, can you change this? And I'd be like, I'm making you look daft here now, aren't I? So when he sent the spousal one, I was like, you're having a laugh. So he emailed me saying, I want a copy of all of your bank statements for the last however many months so we can see what you've got going in, what you're going out, so we can work out what you should be paying. So I just replied to him saying, you will definitely not be receiving any bank statements from me unless it's court ordered. To be clear, I will not agree to pay any spousal maintenance, as I don't believe it's justified. I have kept the family home and I have kept the upkeep of that because mum could not afford it, and I've got that in writing that she couldn't afford to keep the house and she wanted me to keep it. We went through a joint bankruptcy before we separated, so I have no assets. I have a company car. I don't have my own car. I have no savings. And I gave him a rough breakdown of my outgoings, and I included stuff like gardener, window cleaner, all those things. And I said, this is what I'm left with, and it was a minus. And I said, so can you confirm back what you believe I should pay? Never responded. Never came back to me because he knew he was asking for something. He was just trying to scare me to agree and pull out of court. That's what they were trying to do. So once we got rid of that silliness, he then told her he convinced her, and I know it was solicitor given because this is what they do. He convinced her that she should accuse me of being controlling and coercive. So I got a statement, and you're going to laugh when I tell you what the statement said, but the statement said that I was controlling and coercive, and it gave a list of things that I did that were control. So I was accused of being controlling and stuff when we were together, like I used to stop her eating and stuff. No one stopped her eating, that's not true. But specifically the reasons why I was still being controlling and coercive after we separated, and I was doing it through the children. And the things that were written on there were straightening my daughter's hair even though she doesn't want her hair straightened.
What?
That's controlling. I was forcing the children to eat vegetables. I was deliberately washing the children's clothes that came to mine from hers in order to wind her up.
What?
Because she'd asked me not to wash them. That was just some of the things that were on there. I was financially controlling because I wouldn't give her money for the children. And I'm like, I pay a set amount that I'm told to pay. So, as you can imagine, it was ridiculous. But unfortunately, before I received that statement, I panicked a little bit because I was like, if she's going to start accusing me of stuff, serious stuff, I might lose my kids.
Yeah.
So I spoke to family and they said, you need to get some help. You know, don't do it on your own because it's too much of a risk. So they said, no, you've done it yourself so far. She said, but go back to Fathers for Justice and just ask them if they'll support you through this because of that. So I spoke to them and they gave me a cost, which I believe was about $2,300, $2,400 to assist me with the court. Now, at the time, I'll be honest, I thought that was to assist me from there until the very last hearing about the children. So they were, I mean, to be honest with you, they were good. I got a lot of help, a lot of support, but they didn't explain to me that if I was to ring them up or email them asking them a basic question, that was using up my hours. So they had a certain amount of hours that they gave me. So when I was asking them, like I'd get a phone call. I got a phone call from the police for something. It was really something really stupid, like accusation that was labelled at me, and I asked them what I should respond with. And I didn't know every time I did that, they were taking like an hour out of the time. So after the first court hearing, and I said, like, what's the situation? Because they went to the court hearing for the me being accused of being abusive, and that was throughout. The judge said there's no evidence. I had a lot of evidence of her being abusive. I had the messages to my partner. I had messages where I was called all sorts. I was told to go back to Wythenshawe with my scummy family and leave her family alone. There was lots. So I provided that, broken down, to prove that I wasn't being abusive. And in actual fact, it was more likely the other way. But I never made any accusations the other way because I had no interest. I think the actual wording that I used was I didn't want to throw more shade than light into the situation because I just wanted to move forward for the sake of the kids. And that, again, was all about that. I don't want to accuse her of anything, even though here's the evidence, because I don't want to delay things. I want to move on from this and I want to get to the hearing for the children, and that's what's right. So we finished that hearing. It was throughout, and I had a lady assist me in the hearing. She just advised me before, and she took notes during. She wasn't allowed to speak because she's not a solicitor. So I thought, right, well, next hearing coming up, they'll assist me in that. And they sent me a breakdown of the hours that I'd used, and I was now conveniently out of hours. And if I wanted them to assist me in the next hearing, it would be the same fee again. And I was just like, I'm not doing that again. Because now we're at the point where I was before, where I'm comfortable representing myself. The abuse accusations have been thrown out. So now it's just about proving that I want what's right for the children. So we went to the
one sec.
And so we went to the final hearing, and it was done via video link because again it was still in COVID. So I was disappointed by that because I felt like I represent myself better in person, but it was no option. So I could have asked to delay it, but I didn't want to delay things anymore in case it kept going and kept going. So we went to that final hearing, and they went through panel of judges. They went through everything, all the evidence. Said they viewed all the evidence. We'd submitted final statements again for what we both wanted for the children and why we wanted it. Again, I kept mine child focused all the way through. I had got agreement from work that they were willing to allow me to work a longer day. So I worked an extra day when I had the children, and on the week I had the children, I worked shorter days so I could pick them up. And I'd also got work to agree that as soon as a position was available in a store closer to home, because at the time I was working in Chester, I could move to that store. Because that was a big argument from mum that if I get the children half the time, my partner would end up having them, or family, because I'd be working. So again, I overcame that objection because that would have been a big thing that would have been used. So they said we're confident that that Dad wants the children for the right reasons and not because of money, because that was something that I was accused of. We're confident that Dad has got agreement from his work that he can work around the arrangement, and we agree with Dad that the children will benefit from being with him more, and both parents getting equal time to do hobbies, school, and those things.
That's good.
So they basically, as they were reading through, I could see, obviously, Mum on the camera, I could see she kind of knew. And I'll be honest with you, I wasn't 100% confident because I'd been told, and Mum had said it all the way through, Dad's never get custody. You'll never win. Dad's never get custody. That was through at me a lot. And people said it's going to be difficult. But I think what I would say, I think it's important for anyone who's listening, who's going to go through it, is that you just have to keep doing the right thing, even though it's hard. You have to, as a dad, and things are changing, they're getting better, but as a dad, you are still treated differently, judged differently in the court system. It's just a fact. People can deny it, but it is a fact. You've got to keep calm at all times. You've got to do the right thing, even when it feels that you're being treated unfairly, and you've just got to wait until you get through that process if you're going to go through it. If you decide that you're going to respond to your ex with an abusive message once, she can send you 10, but that one you'll get ripped apart for, because you'll be made out like you are scary because you're a man. You're more overwhelming for, if you're getting angry in front of a woman, and, so it is difficult. And I've tried to help friends and people I know when they've separated, and I give them advice, but they can't control the temper. Luckily, I'm really able to control my temper and stay calm most of the time, especially if I know it's for a big reason. So I came out of that. They gave joint custody. So I gained all 3 children from Sunday until Sunday on alternate weeks. We have set alternating New Year, set alternating Christmas and Christmas Eve. We have split school holidays because obviously it's week on, week off. We do now. We have got to a point where if one of us wants to take them on a holiday for longer, we are a little bit flexible. But that didn't happen at first. That took a little while. And it worked fine. The week on, week off worked fine. Don't get me wrong, there was times when, especially with my eldest, because he was becoming a teenager, he would push his luck and it would be difficult, especially with my partner, because I think he was always influenced by Mum. He was Mum's favourite. So he was for Mum. So if Mum tells him someone's horrible enough times, he's going to start to believe it. I'd like to think that when he gets older, he'll realise, when people were just trying to do the best for him. But we had that week on, week off, all 3 children up until towards the end of last year. And then my eldest got caught he got caught vaping, and he was only 13, 14. So
okay.
we all spoke, all of us, me, his mum, her partner and my partner, and we said we were really annoyed, disappointed with him, and we agreed punishments. And within a couple of days of him being back at his mum's after my week, she'd just not stuck to them. He was back out with his mates. He was grounded at mine the whole week. So when he came back to me the week after, he thought he was just going to have a free reign back at mine. I was like, "You're grounded." Well, mum let me out. I'm not letting you out. You're grounded. Like I told you were grounded for a month. You're grounded for a month. You know, my 2 weeks are still going to be what we agreed. And he wasn't happy about that, obviously, you know, because now I'm the bad one because mum's let him out because he's done really well, so I've let him out early. What, after 3 days? He was grounded for a month. Month became 3 days. It's not enough. So
did you end up going back to court then? Because obviously you can't stick to...
So what happened is the week after he went back to mum's, I went to pick him up as normal on a Sunday, and he refused to come. But it had now become, I don't want to come to yours because Jordan, who's my partner, is horrible to me. And I'm like, no, she's not. Get in the car. And he wouldn't. And I said, you need to tell him he's got to come. Like, there's a court order. You can't just ignore it and let him. She's like, well, he said he don't want to go, and I'm not going to force him. I was like, you need to tell him he's got to come, follow the court order. Well, he obviously feels strongly about it. If this, I said, no one's been horrible to him. He just doesn't want to come mine because he knows he's still been in trouble. That's it. And she just started shouting at me, get out of my house, blah, blah, blah. So I sat outside for a bit, I'll be honest, and none of my children have ever not wanted to come mine. Never. Even when they were, before we had the joint custody, if they come mine extra night, they'd be like, I want to go dad's. So for my child to sit there and say, I'm not coming, Dad, was really heartbreaking. It was really difficult. And I sat in that car and I was like, what do I do? What do I do? I've gone through all of this. I've gone through court. I've gone through everything. What do I do? So I phoned the police. They said, it's not a police matter. I was like, but it's a court order. Is the court order say it's police enforceable? No, nothing we can do. You need to go back to court.
The only thing you can do is get an emergency order.
Yeah, so they told me to go back to court. I sat outside for a while and said, like, you know, if he wants to come out, he'll come out. Didn't come out. So I spoke to his mum and him over the next couple of weeks, and they kept saying, you know, I kept thinking he'll come eventually. It's just a short-term thing because he's angry. And he just wasn't. He just didn't come. He didn't come. He just kept saying no. I'd message every Sunday and say, I'm going to wait an extra 5 minutes, mate. If you want to come out, I'll wait for you. He never came out. And then the real turning point where I knew that I'd lost, when I say lost him, it felt like I'd lost him. The real turning point was we were due to go on holiday. We were going on a family holiday, and we were booking it, and we were going abroad with the kids to a water park, and he'd have loved that. And I said to him, I want to take you on holiday, mate. I want to book you on this holiday. I said, but I can't book you on a holiday when you've not seen us for months. So I just need you to come and stay with us for a couple of days, and then we'll book you on the holiday. So I know you can come around me, Jordan, and we can spend some time together. And he said, okay, I'll come stay. And he came. He was out with his mates. He's supposed to come at like 6 o'clock. He said, can I go out with my mates for a bit instead? I said, yeah, of course you can. So we got in at 9:15. His tea was ready. He sat in at his tea. He didn't finish it. I thought, I'm not going to push it. It's his first night back. So I said, all right, 40 minutes if you don't want it. At this point, my other half said, I'm going to go get ready for bed. Like, because she didn't want to upset him. It's his first night back. So she kind of left him. So we had a bit of a chat. He said, I want to go in my room, go on my computer. I was like, no problem. So he went in his room, went upstairs, like, you all right? He's like, yeah, I feel uncomfortable. I said, well, why do you feel uncomfortable? He said, I don't know, like, because you're getting in bed and I don't want to be noisy. And I was like, well, do you want to go downstairs? Because it was weekend. He said, go downstairs on your Xbox downstairs and you can be a bit louder, but don't be too loud. I said, would you feel more comfortable doing that? He said, yeah, I would. Okay. So I went downstairs. Now I stayed up because I wanted to make sure he was all right. So it got to about 2 a.m. and I was like, you're going to go sleep soon? He went, yeah, just playing one more game and I'll go sleep. So I will make sure you tidy everything up and get yourself in bed. So I got woke up in the morning by my other half and she said, he's downstairs asleep on the sofa. And I'm like, so I've gone downstairs. I'm like, woke him up. Didn't have a go. Woke him up. Went, mate, you promised me you'd go to bed. Oh, I'm sorry I fell asleep. I said, you've not tidied anything up. And he's got up, he's like, oh, I'll tidy it. Went, I'll do it. Go and get yourself in bed. So I tidied it all up, got himself in bed. I woke him up that day. I said, you coming out? We're going out for a bit. No, I'm too tired. All right, no worries. Left him in bed because he's been up late. And then he just decided that he'd go out to football training and then didn't want to come back again. So he went to football training and then he didn't come back. And I'm ringing him. So I rang his mum and said, you know where he is? He's here. What's he doing there? He just said he didn't want to come back. So I messaged him saying, what's going on? He said, I'm just sorry, I just don't feel comfortable, I don't want to come back. I said, uncomfortable with what? Like, you've come in, sat on your Xbox and then gone sleep. Nothing's happened. You know, I just feel uncomfortable with Jordan there. I said, but you've not even seen her. She said hello and then went to bed. Like, she stayed out of your way to not make you feel uncomfortable on your first night. I said, like, I need you to come back. No, I'm not coming back. So I tried a couple of times to speak to him about the holiday and he just said, I said, the thing is, I can't book you on that holiday because when we're on a plane, you can't come back. You can't go to your mum's. You're stuck with us for a whole week. I said, I need to know you're going to be comfortable with that. And he said, I don't think I will be. So we booked the holiday without him and went on the holiday. And don't get me wrong, we had a good time, but it was difficult because there was times when you were doing things and you're like, he'd love this. And even his brother and sister were going, Karen, I'd love this. And it was difficult. We had a good time, but it felt wrong. You know, It felt wrong. And we went through that period. I wanted him to come back. He didn't. And strangely enough, it just happened to be that within a couple of days of each other, both me and his mum put applications into court, which was annoying because her application was free and I paid for mine. And it was about £300. And literally, they both dropped through the door at the same time to say mine had gone. And they just got made into one. But would have needed mine if she'd done hers. And I applied for an enforcement of the order. And she applied for a variance of the order. And we went to the first hearing. They suggested Kafkas do reports. I have certain days where I go and do something with him on my own to try and build that relationship back up. And then we go back in however many months. Now, at this point, by the time we got to the first hearing, it had been towards 6 months. And I said to the judge, I appreciate what you're saying, but if you don't bring him back into my care, it's going to be so hard for him to go back if you leave it any longer. So I said it's going to be extremely difficult for him to go back because he's getting into a new routine now. And his brother and sister are used to him not being there. So all of a sudden, he's been at his mum's for 6 months. He's had his own room half the time because his brother's not there. Now he's got to come back to dad's and share a room. I said, you give me another 6 months before we come back. I think he's going to have, because he was already getting in trouble. He was getting in trouble with police. He was not going to school to the point where he'd not been to school for months at one point. And I'm saying to everybody, why is no one doing anything? Because he'd never missed school when he was coming to me. Now he's been taken away from me for only had half the time. But even when he was at his mum's, he went to school because he knew if he came back to me, I'd be annoyed with him. So I'm like, he's not going to school. He's getting in trouble with the police. I'm in front of a judge. His mum's breached a court order that was already granted that the judge felt was the right thing to do previously. And you're now telling me you're not going to enforce the order. I said, my concern is that we come back in 6 months and he's going to gone off the rails and we can't go back. And the judge said, I understand, but I haven't got enough information to make that decision. So we went down the route of doing all the Kafkas reports. We had early help involved, who, I'll be honest with you, we had one person from early help and she was great. And as soon as we met her, she seen what was going on. She seen that Karen wanted to be at his mum's because it was easier and he could manipulate her because he'd get what he wanted. And she was like trying to say to mum, this is not the best thing for him. Like, can you not, he wasn't getting into this trouble and doing these things when he was with dad. You need to let dad have more control. And the only way you can do that is you've got to step back. And she just wasn't willing to do it. She wasn't willing to listen. And this support worker was really pushing and pushing. And then out of nowhere, I got a phone call to say that we couldn't have the same support worker anymore because the kid's mum had made a complaint about her, but in that complaint, she'd included recordings of meetings that she'd secretly taken. And you're not allowed to do that. So because of that, they could no longer allow that support worker to work with her. And we got a new support worker replaced, and she was terrible. The first time she rang me, I answered the phone and she said, hi, it's such and such from Warrington Social Services. Yeah, I said, how can I help? She said, are you your dad, aren't you? I said, yeah. She said, I just got some questions. I was like, okay, no problem. She said, first thing is, what are you doing to support mum? And instantly I got my back up because I'm like, hang on a minute. You've not even asked me what's going on.
Yeah.
I was like, what do you mean? What am I doing? She went, well, I've been and met mum and I've met Kyron and they've told me what's going on. I want to know what you're doing to support them. I said, well, why are you not coming to meet me? Now, this support worker as well, I'd reported stuff to them. So it was me that reached out to them. But they then went and met mum and the child and didn't come and see me. So I had a couple of conversations with this person, and she'd already decided that I was the problem. I was a bad dad. I wasn't doing enough. I wasn't supporting mum. And I raised the complaint with Warrington Social Services, and the manager met with me, and I went through it all with her, and she apologised. I got an apology, but by that point, the damage was done, because this social worker had sat down with mum and Kyron, and she had basically said to them, you're right, your dad's wrong. And now he's not only got people that love him around him telling him that I'm the one in the wrong, now the people who should be the ones that know have backed it up. And at that point, I think we just weren't going to get anywhere, because now there's people, professionals saying, yeah, you're wrong. So he hasn't really ever returned back to school properly. He's in there, but he's not going in lessons. He's getting kicked out, and his mum's now pushed for him to be diagnosed with different things. Now, I'm not saying that he doesn't have ADHD. He's been diagnosed with ADHD and ODD, which I think is defiance disorder, which means basically he struggles to be told what to do. And the difficulty I have with those things is he didn't have them when he lived with me. So have they been something that's become as a result of being allowed to develop behaviours, and now he can't stop because he's been in control, and he is in control. It's really difficult for me because I go to meetings with school and I agree with what they're saying, people, and it's upsetting to hear that he's not getting the education he should get. But when then I say, well, this should happen, and his mum will say, but I need the more support from you. I'm like, how do I do that? Because you have taken away my authority over him. He doesn't respect me the same way he used to. If I went to a meeting in his school in the past and he'd been rude to a teacher, I would only have to look at him and he would apologise to that teacher. Now, he would swear at that teacher in front of me. That's how far I've lost the respect of him as a father. He still loves me. I know he still loves me, but he doesn't respect my authority because I don't have any.
You can't discipline him.
What can I do? I just go, I'm not listening to you. I live at mum's. Mum doesn't discipline me. So we've got to the point there where I'd lost that. And I spoke to him. So we started to do things and see each other a bit more. And he plays football with me every Tuesday night. We play football, and he plays with the grown lads that I do. He's the youngest there, and he holds his own. And I enjoy that because I'm proud of him for that hour. I'm proud to have him as my son because I know he's a good kid, but I'm not proud of the way he's behaving at the minute and the things he's doing, and it's disappointing for me. But I also know, unfortunately, it's learned behaviour and it's not really who he is. So I know he'll grow out of it. I just hope he doesn't do too much damage on the way of going out of it. But for that hour where we go and play football, he's just my son. We play football together and we have a laugh, and he plays well, and everyone is like, he's only 15, your lad is good him, so it's that moment where I can have that hour with him and I enjoy it. But that's it. I try and get him to come round and spend time with us. He rarely comes round.
It's painful as well once you get to that sort of age and you're near enough an adult.
I've got 3 children, but I only feel like a dad to 2. And those 2 children the most, loving, beautiful children. But they're also missing out on spending a week with their brother every other week as well. That relationship's different now. It's a different dynamic. So unfortunately, I got to the point where I was at the point where I felt that when I went back to court, the judge would have enforced the order, but maybe not for a full week. They may have enforced him to come and spend some time with me. Because they told Mum to expect that would happen when we came back, but how long for would be decided by Kafkas.
Yeah.
The issue I had was we were now at the point where it was difficult, so we arranged to go on a holiday not long before court, after the first hearing, not long before the next hearing. We were going to Holland. We were driving. So I said, Kyron's invited. If he wants to come, he's invited. And I'll be honest with you, I didn't think he would come because he'd not come abroad. I didn't think he'd want to come in a car on a trip. But I was supposed to be seeing him that morning before we were going to go that night because we were driving. So his mum said, yeah, he still wants to see you and he wants to come. I'm like, okay. It's a bit of a shock, but great. So I thought, maybe this is the start, of him actually wanting to be, this is him to see if he wants to be with us and come on holiday so that after court he can stay. And we went to I went to pick him up. We went out for a few hours. And he was great. I had a good time. Dead relaxed. Went to get some food. And I said, do you want to have food here? Do you want to go back? He went, we'll go back. We can get something for Jordan as well then. And I was like, okay, that's a step. So we went back home. We took food. He was chatting to my fiance, perfectly fine. He was getting on with her. And we were getting ready. And I'm like, okay, he's coming. So we went and got his brother and sister because they were picked up at later time as normal.
Yes.
And he came. He came in the car. He wanted to know where we were going because we didn't tell them. I'm like, you'll find out when we get there. And then we went down to the ferry, but we stayed at a hotel nearby. And then I think he came because he didn't want to miss out on a holiday. And I'd seen on his phone that he'd had his nan and people messaging him saying, just go. You don't have to spend time with them, but it's a free holiday. And I read that and I was like, what? Why? You've convinced him to come when he maybe didn't want to come. And now he's here. So as soon as we got to the hotel and he realised we weren't getting on a plane, his demeanour changed. He was like, oh, what are we doing? Where am I staying? And I said, you're in a room with me. And me and your brother are in a room, like triple room for the night. And to stop him being uncomfortable, we put my partner and my little girl in another room. So he didn't have to share a room with us the first night. And he just was moping around, like, total demeanour changed. So we got up in the morning, got on the ferry. He got a bit more upbeat. We got to the place where we were staying and we were in a cabin, but he had his own room. So we'd put his brother and sister in a room. He had his own room, but he was fuming. I thought I was going to get my own separate room. What do you mean? So he'd gone on holiday with his nan and granddad a few months before, and they'd got him his own hotel room. And I'm like, you're 14, kid. You're not having your own hotel room. Like, so you come on a family holiday. I told you it's a family holiday. I made it clear to him we're going to spend a lot of time together. It's a family holiday. It's not. I said, I told you that before you came. So straight away, his demeanour changed. The first day, he came to the pool with us. He spent time with us. But from there, it slowly went back where he was just sitting up all night on the phone to his friends. And in the morning, he wasn't getting up. And I'm like, well, we're going out. You need to get up. No, I'm not getting up. I'll stay here. So I was like, right, okay. So we only went local round like the chalet. But then he was ringing his mum saying, they're just leaving me on my own. And she's messaging me. And I'm like, I'm not leaving him on his own. He won't get up. I can't just keep everyone else in all day. We're on holiday. Like, if he wants to get up and come, he can come. Otherwise, he's on the complex. Like, he's not a baby. He stays at home on his own all the time.
Yeah, 14's.
So this went over a couple of days, and then we got to like the third day, and I was like, I'm getting him up. So I'm trying to get him up, wake him up, nudging him, pushing him, get up. And he, this has only ever happened once. And he woke up and he turned around and told me to fuck off. He's never swore at me before, ever. And at that point, I was just like, I can't have this. I can't have that level of disrespect, because if I got angry with him there and started being really annoyed, I'd be accused of being abusive or horrible to him. But at the same time, I can't have his brother and sister thinking that I'm going to allow
I
that.
see that's acceptable.
Because it's not. It might happen at his mum's, out of my control, but not in my house. Will not happen. So we went through the rest of the holiday. It got a bit more difficult. There was times when we spoke. There's one point where he winds his brother and sister up a lot, and there was one point where he turned around to his little brother was hiding from him in the pool, and I was like, "What are you doing?" He was distraught. I was like, "Why are you hiding?" He went, he's just being horrible to me all the time. I said, "What do you mean? You like what are you upset for?" He said, he's just making it hell for me. And I'm just there, and I'm like, it's so hard because I want him to come and live with me so much, but I'm like, I'm forcing you to come and live with me when you don't want to, and it's making everyone else miserable. And we came back from that holiday, and I spoke to family, and I said, I'm going to withdraw my application because he doesn't want to be here. If I force him to come, he'll just keep walking out. I'll have no control over him because his mum will let him go back. She won't back me up, and I've not got the authority. And then on top of that, I'm going to upset his brother and sister. They've got used to a stable, calm house now. So I wrote a statement. I spoke to him first, and I said, tell me what you want. Do you want to stay at your mum? I said, I'd rather you just told me, because I said, I'm going court in a few days, and if that's what you want, then I'll let you stay. And he said, I want to stay at mum's. I'm just happier there. So I said, okay. So I wrote a statement, and I was quite. It was difficult, but I wanted to be honest, and I wrote it saying that that I felt that the courts had let me down because they'd left it too long, so I couldn't get him back, and I felt that his mum had made some very bad decisions that had led to me having no control over him, and my main concern is his mental health, and if I force him to come where he doesn't want to be, it's just going to deteriorate. So I'm going to accept that he stays with his mum, but I hope that she will put the effort in to try and change his behaviours, because otherwise I'm very worried for how, where he goes. And the judge basically, she said, I'm sure that was very hard to do. And actually the judge was great. The judge, she was really good all the way through. And I honestly think she was going to enforce it. So the fact that I withdrew it, I think she was quite surprised, but I think she respected the decision because she knew that she was enforcing something that might not have worked. So that's where we're at now. We've got the two full half the time. My eldest, since that court hearing, he came round for a few hours on his birthday, and he came round on Christmas Eve for a few hours. And if I'm being honest, it was kind of because he knew he had presents. And he spends time with me on my own, but I've tried, when we spoke about things before court, because he said a lot of stuff about my partner that's not true. He said that she's done stuff to him that she hasn't done, and he's lied about things that I have physically seen that I know aren't true. So I said to him, now you've got what you wanted. When we get past the final court hearing and you can stay at your mum's, I need you to stop this behaviour and these lies, because it's impacting everyone. It's not going to affect you now, because he told me the reason why he didn't come round and he wasn't being nice to her and he didn't want to come round and see her is because he thought that would make him go back. So now I've let him stay. I thought he'll start coming round and spending time with us now, but unfortunately it's just not happened yet. And we're only months down the line, but we're just at the point where he's a teenager anyway. He's 15 now. So teenagers don't spend time with their parents that much anyway.
No.
But all I want from him is just to, on his way past, feel comfortable, just come in. Can I get a drink? Can I use the toilet? Because I see him sometimes because we've got his tracker on his phone. I see he's local sometimes, but he just walks by.
You probably see it more when he gets 21, 22.
Yeah, I mean, I know, having grown up myself, I know that I thought certain people were great when I was a kid, and I grew up and then realised who the real people were that were wanting the best for me. So I wouldn't want to sit on any sort of podcast and say that his mum has done anything deliberate. I think she has at times felt that she was doing the right thing for him, but it couldn't have been further away from the right thing. And unfortunately, he's now got to the point where she's the only person who has any control and she has very little. So I just have to hope that I've put enough into him before he pulled away that he pulls himself out of where he's at now. he gets himself an education and he doesn't get himself in any trouble. But I'm there for him if he wants me, but my focus has to be on the people who want me to be there.
Yeah, well, you're going to have an impact.
Hopefully. And that's where it is with the with the younger children, and they're doing great. The one thing I would say, as much as it's been really upsetting to see the fallout from my eldest not wanting to be around my partner, what it has done is it's allowed my younger boy to get really close to her, because he never really allowed himself to be close. And he's told me since that whenever he would say anything nice about her, my eldest would say, "No, she's not. She's horrible." So he never felt he could show any affection towards her. And now he will cuddle her. He'll talk to her about things he doesn't even talk to me about. He'll tell her he loves her. He'd never told her he loved her before until he wasn't there. So what I have seen, as much as I've lost that relationship, I have seen my other child gain a relationship. So unfortunately, sometimes you just have to take the good from the bad and focus on those.
It's a shame from what you've said with your eldest, it seems like it's learned behaviour from the language used, and which could have been preventable. But
I don't blame in a way, and it's not to be I don't want to slag people off, but I'm not even 100% sure that I blame his mum. I blame the people who raised his mum to be her. And that's not because I used to have a lot of respect for the kids' grandparents, especially their granddad. But unfortunately, they have raised someone who is a bit spoiled and who has a sense of entitlement. And that person is now passing that on to my son. And it's really, really difficult and upsetting to see when every dad says, "My kid won't be like this." But once you've lost control, your influences, I still see bits of me in him. He'll always have that. But I see more and more of other people in him. And it is difficult.
I think now we're pretty much coming towards the end, so there's a few questions just to wrap it up, 'cause I think we have been a little while. I say one thing, I think you've got the record for the longest so far.
I did tell you I talked a lot, to be fair, and there's a lot. I mean, there's stuff I haven't said, but I've tried to. There's been a lot that's happened over the last.
You're the first to break 3 hours. I'll give you that.
There you go. Yeah.
So, have you got any red flags that you saw in the relationship but you chose to ignore that you can recall of?
Unfortunately, I ignored them. That's the problem. But there was little things that I think back and I'm like, I just kind of ignored them at the time because I was a bit blind. But quite early on in a relationship, before we'd even moved in together, it was Christmas and her mum and dad brought down 2 big sacks of presents. Huge they were. Never seen anyone gift that. And I remember she said, "Is that it? I got 3 last year." And I was like, because I didn't get much from my parents, not as a grown up, not much money, but when I was growing up, I barely some aftershave or something. So, and I always remember it. I always remember that
entitlement.
Yeah, and I don't. Again, if that's what you get, you become accustomed to it, don't you? So you do question when you don't get. So yeah, I would say that there's certainly a sense of entitlement, and I think people say opposites attract. Opposite personalities can attract. Opposite morals don't. And I think if you meet someone whose morals don't match with yours, don't ignore it.
Would you give any advice to another father going through separation?
Well, if I'm being honest, there was a time, like obviously I say I don't regret staying with the children's mum because I had more children, but there was a point in our relationship where I had my child and I could have kept him and she would have had to be the one going for custody, not me. And I would say too many dads walk out the home, and as soon as you're gone, it's very difficult to get that control back. So I would say if it's possible, until something's agreed and you've got something from a solicitor, don't leave. Because once you've gone, you aren't going to be able to say that you're the resident parent.
That always seems to be the one that comes up.
Yeah.
Would you have done anything differently?
I would have done things differently, but I wouldn't change anything that's happened because I've met someone amazing now. And I also feel like I'm a stronger person. I'm certainly I'm a better person. I think the one thing possibly, because we didn't, we probably should never at the time have arranged to get married. We were engaged, but we weren't ready. And people will say, well, you were together for ages, but we weren't getting on. And we still continued to book things and pay for things. So, yeah, I would say that's the only thing. Now, luckily, and it's not been touched on, but luckily my divorce was quite straightforward. I wasn't expecting it to be, but it was. I think the reason is that she will be due inheritance at some point and I won't. So there was no reason for her not to accept it because there's nothing to gain from me. But again, I've come out of that side of it okay. Some people will have all of the battles I've had with maintenance and also lose things through a separation because of a marriage. So I think, yeah, everyone gets engaged with the intention of marrying, but I think some people get married because of the pressure of being engaged. And I think if you're not ready, you can stay engaged.
I'm guessing you're not married.
I'm engaged.
You're engaged?
Yeah.
I was going to say, would you ever get married again? But I guess that's already answered that.
Yeah, I think the person that I've met now, the one thing, don't get me wrong, we argue. Everyone argues. We disagree. We disagree on stuff to do with the children. We disagree on stuff to do with life. We disagree on who cleans the dishes best. But the one thing that I get from her that I've never had from anybody else, literally anybody else in life, including parents and family, is I trust her. And when you've had your trust broken repeatedly and been let down by people, trust is really powerful. And I don't ever feel that trust will be broken. I'm not saying that we won't have our problems, but I don't ever have to worry about whether she would do the things to me that other people have. So that for me is really powerful. And I also feel that we have the same morals, which I touched on earlier. I think we both know what's right and what's wrong. We don't always agree on things, but when it comes down to those deep set morals, we agree. Sometimes we don't realise, but we do. When we get past a little argument, we actually agree. And I think that's the main thing. When we calm down, actually we're saying the same thing, but we're saying it wrong.
Okay, yeah. And I think last question. Can you come up with 2 words to summarise this whole episode, and that'll be the name of your podcast? You can always text me later if you're struggling.
No, I mean, I think for me, if you want to come out of the other end of a separation involving children without losing what's most important to you, the main thing that you have to have and be patient.
Yeah.
And that would be it, because if you try and force what you want, you're not going to get there. If you be patient and do things correct, you will come out of the other end better off than losing your patience. So I would say, yeah, be patient.
Okay, that's great. Thanks for coming.
No worries.
It's been great.
Yeah, thank you.